Chapter 498, Sword Against Sword, the time-transcending struggle of Sword Dao. You have successfully seized 2,809,837,622 years of lifespan from Yi Tianji, profound Yuan free immortal. Late stage, looking at the prompt before him, Gu An's mood improved, and he looked up. The warriors from the battle court maintained their distance, staring incredulously at the Grand Temple. Yi Tianji had vanished directly under Gu An's hand, making it feel surreal for them. In their minds, Yi Tianji was so powerful, how could he have died so easily? It wasn't until the giant hand above the celestial spirit great world suddenly dissipated that the warriors of the battle court snapped back to reality. Our Lord has fallen. How is that possible? Who is he exactly? And those divine envoys too, bad news. Run. It can't be, absolutely impossible. The battle court exploded into chaos, with many warriors promptly fleeing. Gu An's right foot shifted slightly, and in an instant, several warriors from the battle court burst apart, turning into mist of blood that spread across the void. Since he was taking action, how could he not earn some more lifespan? However, he wouldn't kill all these creatures from the battle court. Doing so would seem like a vendetta. He wanted to continue maintaining the image of someone acting on behalf of all beings of the celestial spirit great world. Randomly selecting a few creatures from the battle court to eliminate was an unfortunate fate that befell them. One prompt after another appeared before Guan, making his mood even more delightful. Protecting all living beings while profiting himself, how could he not be pleased? Young Immortal Emperor and Saint Minister still stood in place, despondent as the warriors of their battle court were so easily defeated in front of supporting Dao's sword venerable. They felt both excitement and despair. They thought about their own ambitions and previous schemes, and suddenly felt how ridiculous their past selves were. At the same time, they admired supporting Dao's sword venerable even more. Possessing such strength yet still interacting gently with them demonstrated a powerful attitude of kindness towards the weaker. Soon, the void fell into silence again. Guan felt many powerful divine senses sweep across but quickly withdraw. This battle eventually did alarm some beings of great power in the depths of the universe, yet no one dared provoke Guan. They even regretted their curiosity, fearing being targeted by Guan. Without interacting with young Immortal Emperor and the other, Guan soared up, collecting 9 suns into the palm of his hand, and then headed towards the depths of the universe. The creatures of the celestial spirit great world returned to daylight, and as the oppressive terror enveloping the world vanished, they began to communicate, discussing what exactly had happened. Even without clear understanding of the events, they felt like they had narrowly escaped a disaster. Long Qing was still kneeling on the ground, holding his head with both hands, gasping heavily in extreme agony. Eventually, people noticed his condition and gathered around. Even an Xian was drawn over. Watching supporting Dao's sword venerable disappear into the depths of the universe, Saint Minister approached young Immortal Emperor, frowning. Has he left? Young Immortal Emperor glanced at him, asking, why do you say that? Supreme sect is widely spreading that supporting Dao's sword venerable is leaving them. It's been over 100 years since he last returned. This time, Saint Minister hesitated. He had spies within Supreme sect and thoroughly knew their every affair. On hearing this, young Immortal Emperor frowned. Standing in Gu An's place, he too felt that Guan might grow weary. From his understanding, Guan was indeed a great cultivator who lived in seclusion and coveted nothing. Just the thought of such a great power leaving the celestial spirit great world made him feel uneasy inevitably. Could the reincarnation phenomenon from a few days ago portend an even more terrible calamity? Both young Immortal Emperor and Saint Minister fell into silence while the grand temple of the battle court completely submerged into darkness, losing all light. In the darkness, Saint Minister mournfully said, regardless of whether he leaves or not, his deeds today must be known to all. That so-called heavenly Tao has never helped us, only he has shouldered everything. Even though young Immortal Emperor, endowed with the celestial Tao golden core power, harbored no fondness for the so-called heavenly Tao, he replied, I think so too. Even if he does not return, even if we eventually face the end, at least while we are alive, we should be grateful to him. In the dark void, Guan stepped forward, toying with 9 golden pearls in his hand. These were the previous 9 suns, encapsulated with an abundance of power of the great Tao. He was washing away the causality within them. His journey deep into the universe was not to deliberately mislead the too young immortal emperor, but for other reasons. He halted his stride and said, "You've been watching for a long time, isn't it time to show yourself?" As his words fell, a silver-blue sword chi appeared through the thick heavenly Tao mist ahead, swiftly transforming into a human figure. This was a man dressed in a blue Taoist robe, with hair white as frost, a crown atop his head resembling a sword scabbard, his back against the darkness, emitting an ancient and vicissitudinous aura. His gaze was exceedingly sharp, standing there like an eternal divine sword, immortal through the ages. Sword God, early stage of heaven encompassing free immortal realm 0/0/0. Age, current lifespan, and maximum lifespan all 0. Either it's a flesh and blood avatar or not a living being, similar in nature to divine exotic ghost king, bereft of lifespan and freedom, bound to some formidable power in exchange for eternal life. Guan stared at the sword god, feeling somewhat sentimental. This sword god was precisely Yang Xian's disciple, Yang Pingan. Compared to the Yang Pingan of reincarnation memories, this sword god was more vicissitudinous, radiating a twilight aura, yet his sword intent in his eyes was stronger than what Guan remembered of him. In a sense, Yang Pingan had surpassed Yang Xian, who died only as a profound yuan-free immortal. Yang Xian, a 300,000-year-old profound yuan-free immortal, thinking back, his talent was terrifying to the extreme, even without relying on evolved lifespan. Not to mention celestial spirit god, the sword god Yang Pingan was the first heaven-encompassing free immortal Guan had encountered. Guan had earlier sensed Yang Pingan's sword chi, albeit fleetingly. Re-encountering his former disciple in a past life, Guan's feelings were complex. The sword god raised his right hand, using his finger as a sword chi spilling from the tip. He stared at Guan and said, "Your sword Dao is strong, the opponent I've been seeking." Guan, maintaining his celestial dark purple micro-Saint Dao body, the sword god unable to see his expression, confusedly asked, "Opponent?" "I traverse the great thousand world, seeking strong sword Dao practitioners, all to achieve the strongest sword Dao, and you are qualified to be my opponent." The sword god's tone was devoid of emotion, but as his words concluded, a vast sword intent enveloped the void. Guan distinctly felt the celestial spirit god beneath the world gate open its eyes, staring at them. The previous commotion at the battle court failed to attract the celestial spirit god, but the sword god's sword intent did stir an immortal, enough to prove the sword god's might. Such domineering sword intent. Guan raised his right hand, and the celestial star sword granted by Li Ya appeared in his grasp. This sword, regarded as a divine weapon in the mortal world, was less sturdy here than a meteor, yet as Guan's sword chi covered the blade, this sword from the mortal world became the sharpest sword in the universe. The sword god's expression subtly changed, and for some reason, he felt a sense of familiarity emanating from Guan. He lowered his right hand, sword chi directed downward, as if holding a sword. The void dimmed, the great Tao mist surged, their confrontation causing fluctuations in the space. "Let me see how strong you've become after enduring such long eras." That was what Guan thought. Yang Xian's only wish before death was to spar with his disciple to elevate his sword Dao. Unfortunately, the celestial spirit god hadn't given him the chance. "You remind me of someone from the past, I will not hold back." The sword god spoke, his sword intent suddenly erupting. The surrounding great Tao mist was instantly obliterated, absolute darkness threatening to engulf them, yet unable to swallow their sword light. Sword against sword, this was a confrontation of sword Tao across the ages. Chapter 499, Establishing a Dojo. When the sword god's sword intent erupted, Guan glimpsed into his past through it. During the lengthy ages, that series of peak sword battles continuously pushed the sword god's sword Dao to even higher levels. After defeating an opponent, he would devour their sword Dao, thereby enhancing his own sword Dao. The sword god raised his right hand, pointing his sword chi at Guan from afar. In an instant, countless sword shadows appeared from the darkness behind him, radiating different sword intents like a starry sky suddenly alight. The vast sword light shone on Guan, yet it could not expel the demonic chi emanating from his celestial dark purple micro-Saint Dao body. Guan then raised his sword, pointing the celestial star sword directly at the sword god. As he lifted his sword, an incredibly grandiose silver sword shadow appeared behind him, rapidly solidifying, colossal as the heavens and the earth. If one were to move the celestial spirit great world over, they would find it to be only half as long as this sword. Eternal Infinite Divine Sword. The ultimate swordsmanship evolved from the Leaf family swordsmanship. Guan did not use Yang Xian's Sacred Heart Sword Dao, fearing the sword god would recognize it. Even without the Sacred Heart Sword Dao, he was confident he could defeat the sword god. Even if they were at the same realm. Having merged the memories of Long Zhan, Lu Han, Zhu, and Yang Xian from past lives, Guan had effectively become these individuals. Coupled with his own lifespan evolution investment, his strength was unfathomably profound. Apart from the unsolvable Zhu, within the same realm, Guan felt it very unlikely for him to lose, especially since he was not in the same realm as the sword god. The imposing sword intent of the eternal infinite divine sword was like the universe's sharpest will, causing the sword god to furrow his brow slightly. The sword god did not underestimate Guan, but he was still frightened by Guan's sword intent. "What is the name of this sword Dao?" the sword god asked. "Eternal Infinite Divine Sword." Guan pointed his sword at him, and the Eternal Infinite Divine Sword in its state of simplicity and truth burst forth with a dazzling bright light, illuminating half the universe's void. After the sword god muttered, "Eternal Infinite Divine Sword," he promptly waved his hand, and his sword chi slashed out. The endless sword shadows behind him also erupted into vast sword chi, sweeping toward Guan. Meanwhile, the celestial spirit great world had just regained sunlight and began to tremble, and the beings who had survived the calamity were once again startled, particularly the sword cultivators of the world and the Jianghu swordsmen, whose swords buzzed ceaselessly as if ready to unsheath at any moment. Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, who was pondering the theory of heaven, looked up in disbelief. "What a domineering sword Dao, and there are actually two," he murmured to himself. His divine sense quickly reached out into the universe, but his divine sense retracted soon after, and his right hand followed to clutch his chest. His sword Dao had rebounded. Had his reaction not been fast enough, his sword Dao might very well have disintegrated. Though he could not see the figures of Guan and the sword god, he could only see the two vast sword Daos. Even without seeing the masters of the sword Daos, Zhu Luo Sword Monarch guessed. It must be the supporting Dao Sword Venerable and the Sword God. He had previously guessed that the Sword God had come to this universe, but now that the two were actually clashing, he was again astonished. What level of achievement in Sword Dao was needed to possess such vast momentum? The celestial phenomenon lasted for less than 10 breaths, and the heavens and earth quickly returned to calm. However, the beings did not dare take it lightly and remain tense, fearing a greater catastrophe might descend. Elsewhere, in the woods, Guan sat on a rock by the stream, pulling up his attribute panel. Name, Guan, lifespan, 2-144/7-907-228-501, physique, primordial infinite body, cultivation level, innate golden immortal realm perfection, 79 billion years of lifespan. Before today, his lifespan had only been 1 billion years, and now it had soared by 78 billion years in one breath. Thanks to the battle court. Guan felt grateful in his heart. It was still through killing enemies that lifespan came quickly. Before, he had accumulated a lifespan of 100 billion years, which had taken him so many years. However, he was just thinking about it and would not go on a killing spree as a result. The lessons from lifespan reincarnation were already abundant. The reason he could grow steadily to this day was that he had concealed his ability to seize lifespan. He even suspected that Silent Destruction God Emperor was so obsessed with the Long clan precisely because Long Zhan grew stronger through slaughter. Perhaps the Silent Destruction God Emperor thought that members of the Long clan could rapidly become stronger through killing, which was why he continuously possessed the descendants of the Long clan. Guan then thought of the sword god he had just clashed with. To prevent his identity from being exposed, Guan had severely injured the sword god. After the sword god escaped, he would probably need many years to recover, but at least he would not die. Whether it was the identity of Long Zhan or Yang Xian, Guan did not want to expose any of them. Lifespan reincarnation was much more advanced than any reincarnations he had come into contact with so far. Lifespan reincarnation could project into the past, the future, and even alter destiny, which was terrifying. Should this matter be exposed, Guan would undoubtedly attract the wariness of more powerful beings. He saw the Sword God enter the river of Sword Tao and disappear. The river of Sword Tao, the river of destiny, the river of time, and others were all existences independent of the universe, accessible only through the great Tao. They were dangerous and mysterious, and whether they could lead to other universes was still hard to say. Perhaps the Sword God had come through the river of Sword Tao. But Guan felt that the world gates were not for show. To cross universes, one always had to get past the celestial spirit god. Time passed quickly in Guan's thoughts. An hour later, all the beings of heaven and earth finally relaxed. Although they did not know what had happened, the return of tranquility to the world was a good thing. After a little less than half an hour, Yi Xiaoyang and his 4 companions finally arrived at the agreed-upon location. When they saw Guan, they were all pleasantly surprised and immediately rushed over. 3 youths burst into tears on the spot, having been scared out of their wits by the sudden darkness that had fallen over the world. Guan watched them with a smile and did not comfort them, letting them vent on their own. Yi Xiaoyang turned to Guan and asked, "Immortal, do you know why the skies suddenly darkened earlier?" Guan shook his head and said, "How would I know? I only know a little about the art of immortal cultivation." "You really think I'm an immortal? This world is much bigger than you think. It will be more interesting for you to explore on your own than to ask me." Upon hearing this, Yi Xiaoyang fell into endless daydreams. Once they had calmed down, Guan began to teach them the method of qi refinement. The talents of these 5 were not bad. In less than half a day, all had cultivated a thread of spiritual power. It was not until evening that Guan let them go back. Compared to their first farewell, the 5 felt more relaxed, believing that Guan truly intended to teach them. After watching them disappear into the depths of the forest, Guan headed in the opposite direction. With one step, he arrived thousands of miles away. This place was rarely tread by mortals, abundant in spiritual energy, with more plant demons than beast demons. Guan arrived at the top of a high mountain. He stood on the edge of a cliff, his mind moved, and he began to create the Lifespan Dojo. "Please choose the range of your dojo," a prompt appeared, and Guan instantly made a decision. He marked off an area with a radius of 5,000 miles in one go. "You will need to consume 500 million years of lifespan. Would you like to continue?" 500 million years of lifespan, not too bad, acceptable. Guan was actually afraid that this thing would consume a huge amount of lifespan, even an endless amount. If that were the case, he could only give up on the Lifespan Dojo. As his thoughts concluded, he distinctly felt the space fluctuating. At the same time, a vast amount of memories flooded into his mind. He could control everything in the dojo as easily as he could his own hands. Moreover, he needed to store lifespans in the dojo to fend off powerful enemies. The maximum defensive strength of the dojo equaled his cultivation level, and with each assault it encountered, a corresponding amount of lifespan would be deducted. Guan hesitated for a moment before storing 10 billion years of lifespan in the dojo. In the celestial spirit great world, there would be no one capable of attacking his dojo. The reason he stored 10 billion years of lifespan was just in case. Chapter 500, The Person Who Should Not Exist, Celestial Court. After establishing the dojo, Guan immediately teleported the world-excluding cave heaven into place, setting it underground. The dojo was a spherical space, buried in the soil, reaching up to the sky. Guan deliberately placed most of the space beneath the ground, so the underground area was larger than that above. After moving the world-excluding cave heaven, he didn't proceed to relocate the 8 scenic cave heavens but instead called out the 3 celestial demon child sisters. The 3 sisters passed through the ground, and as soon as they emerged, they were captivated by the surrounding mountainous scenery. Their eyes widened as they looked around. Standing at the edge of the cliff, overlooking them, Guan said, "From now on, the land within 1,000 miles is my dojo. You will all live with me here in the dojo from this day forward." Upon hearing this, the 3 sisters were overjoyed, as they could finally live with Guan every day. In a few days, others will come. You won't be alone. If you wish to go out for a walk, I won't stop you, just don't go too far. Guan's next words piqued their curiosity even more. For over 2,000 years, they hadn't met any other beings, but now they eagerly anticipated meeting new people. The three sisters immediately flew to Guan's side, chirping away with endless questions. Guan answered patiently, his face brimming with smiles. Seeing them so happy made him feel content as well. 15 billion years of lifespan had not been spent in vain. In the following days, Guan moved the 8 scenic cave heavens and mountain of 10,000 swords from the 3rd Medicine Valley, taking an Exian, blood prison great saint, and white spirit rat with him. Afterward, he went back to the profound valley alone, summoning Jiang Shi and Enchanting to inform them of his departure and prepare to disperse the disciples of the profound valley. As soon as the teacher and disciple heard this, they immediately knelt down and begged Guan to take them with him. Guan feigned hesitation before asking if they were willing to give up their freedom. Both agreed. Guan deliberately waited a few days to allow the two to dismiss the disciples. After all the disciples had left, Guan then teleported the entire profound valley away. Supporting Dao Sword Venerable had departed. This event eventually spread within the Supreme Sect, causing a significant stir. The 3rd Medicine Valley also experienced a brief tumult, with Long Qing taking over as Valley Master to prevent the disciples from feeling disheartened. The Supreme Sect's higher-ups began to ingratiate themselves with Long Qing, believing that he would become a go-between with Guan. Supporting Dao Sword Venerable was sure to return. Meanwhile, the Holy Court and Immortal Dynasty announced the truth about the calamity from a few days prior to all the world's people. The words "Battle Court" spread rapidly, and supporting Dao Sword Venerable's merits were widely publicized. In this era where the heavenly Dao was the ultimate truth, the name supporting Dao Sword Venerable made beings feel it was even stronger and more trustworthy than the heavenly Dao for the first time. One evening, Shenzhen stood on the cliff, gazing at the still bustling 3rd Medicine Valley with her eyebrows furrowed and eyes filled with grievances. Beneath her veil, she bit her lip, silent. "What are you thinking about?" A familiar voice came from behind, startling Shenzhen as she swiftly turned around. Upon seeing Guan, her eyes sparkled with surprise. How are you here?" Shenzhen began to express her joy, but she held back, asking with a scoffing tone instead. Guan smiled inquisitively, "I feel my dojo lacks a scribe. Without her writing, the dojo would be quite dull. Would you like to come?" Shenzhen's eyes immediately crinkled in laughter. She put her hands on her hips and asked, "You still have a dojo? Aren't you leaving this great heaven and earth?" "Yes, I am leaving, far, far away. Would you like to come with me?" "If you're unwilling, I won't insist." Guan was amused by her posture. He could hear her heart speaking. The girl felt greatly wronged internally. She even muttered some things that gave him goosebumps. "You came to invite me personally, so I have to go." Shenzhen raised her chin in pride. "Do you need to say goodbye to your family?" "Forget it, I've been away for 2,000 years. Our bond has long since been severed. They haven't written to me in 1,000 years." Shenzhen said nonchalantly. Hearing this, Guan didn't ask further and simply waved his sleeve, taking her away. A breeze blew past, leaving no trace of their footsteps. Shenzhen only felt darkness before her eyes, and when she opened them again, she was still standing on a mountain, but the scenery in front had changed abruptly. She just happened to witness Enchanting and Blood Prison Great Saint sparring figures, battling fiercely in the sky, casting various spells with ease, a truly spectacular sight. The wind stirred up by their combat blew her veil, causing her eyes to widen involuntarily. "Elder Shen, you came too?" A voice of surprise came through, only to see an Exian appear out of thin air beside Shenzhen. Shenzhen turned her head to look at an Exian and was secretly astonished. Such quick speed! Suddenly, she found an Exian gave her an unfathomable feeling. She subconsciously looked back at Guan, relieved to see that he was still there. It's not an illusion realm. An Exian, take care of her. Guan dropped these words and then turned and left, preparing to make a trip to the North Sea mountain ridge. Shenzhen just wanted to speak when Guan disappeared on the spot. An Xian covered her mouth and laughed. Stop staring, your eyes will fall out. In the future, you'll see him day and night until you grow tired of it. Shenzhen turned her head to look at her, unable to refrain from asking, what place is this exactly? The setting sun was desolate and beautiful, with strong winds rising. An Xian turned and looked toward the distant continuous mountains, her gaze becoming evasive. This is Master's dojo, he calls it Wuxia. Under the starry sky, the mountains undulated, the hills were covered with white bones, devoid of flowers, grass, or trees. A sword chi suddenly appeared on the hillside, followed by the figure of the sword god, who sat cross-legged, surrounded by sword shadows. His face was deathly pale, with even golden cracks appearing, as if it were about to split open at any moment. You failed? An old voice sounded, echoing through the mountains, lingering for a long time. The sword god remained silent, his eyes tightly shut, clearly enduring immense pain. Eternal infinite divine sword? Such a domineering sword intent. However, this sword Dao still doesn't compare to yours, it's only that the man's strength is greater than yours. This difference in sword Dao is insurmountable. The old voice sounded again, filled with emotion. Not long after his words fell, an elder clad in a white robe with white hair appeared behind the sword god. He was barefoot, emanating a faint white light as if he were an immortal ready to ascend at any moment. He raised his right hand, extending 2 fingers, touching the back of the sword god's neck. The sword god's clothes began to flutter violently, as sword chi surged from the starry sky, like a tornado pouring into the sword god's body. Eh? The white-haired elder uttered in surprise, seemingly sensing something. The sword god opened his eyes, asking, what? Even you can't drive it away? The white-haired elder spoke, though I cannot see its form, I can confirm, this is Lu Qixian's Dao Destruction Destiny Seal. That person must have a connection with Lu Qiuxian. The sword god frowned, his eyes full of confusion. Lu Qiuxian, like you, is attached to the river of the great Dao. However, he is even older than you. Who knows how many destinies are intertwined in his long life? It's normal that you can't calculate it. The white-haired elder spoke with a sense of loss, but then a smile appeared on his face, asking, encountering such a sword Dao master is a good thing for you. You've won too many times, it's about time you lost. At least this time your opponent didn't finish you. From their sword intent, it would not be difficult to completely destroy you. The sword god took a deep breath and said, I know. I don't hold a grudge against him, it's just that he makes me feel like a person, like someone who shouldn't exist. The white-haired elder couldn't help but shake his head, speaking, your master died a long time ago, why be so obsessed with him still? No, you don't understand. I have a feeling that although my master is dead, he still exists. The strengthening Sacred Heart Sword Dao in the river of Sword Dao is the best proof. The sword god looked up at the starry sky, his gaze unwaveringly firm. The white-haired elder sighed, no longer speaking. After a while, the sword god withdrew his gaze, asking, a celestial Dao golden core has appeared in the shattered celestial spirit great world. It's very likely left by the celestial spirit ancestor. Don't you wish to resurrect? This is an opportunity. The white-haired elder laughed softly, the celestial spirit ancestor's golden core is not easy to take. Do you think the celestial spirit god stands guard there for nothing? The so-called celestial Dao golden core is just bait. After so many eras, I didn't expect the celestial court to still not give up. Chapter 501, 1,000 years, 10,000 years. The morning sun penetrated the mountain forest, shining on the stream, sparkling with light. Guan still sat on that rock. A year had passed since he left the supreme sect, and the Daoist field of the beginningless was already filled with various grades of medicinal herbs. It wouldn't take many years before his yearly income from lifespan would increase, surpassing the peak would not be difficult. An Xian, Shenzhen, and others also began to cultivate in seclusion, and Guan taught Yi Xiaoyang and the other 4 each day outside the dojo. Yi Xiaoyang and his group had to climb mountains and wade through waters back and forth every day. Initially, it was very tough, but after a year of cultivation, they had grown accustomed to it, even considering this journey as part of their cultivation. While waiting for them, Guan was watching Zhenqin. Since Yilan passed away, Zhenqin had been continuously gaining experience and opportunities outside, yet, regrettably, she was still about to face her life's limit. And she was still a long way from reaching the Nirvana realm. Zhenqin seemed to sense her celestial mandate, preparing to take revenge on the ghost mother of ephemera. The death of Su Han had always been a thorn in Zhenqin's heart. Her reason to cultivate was also to avenge her senior brother. Su Han, oh Su Han, you thought you were being kind, but have you ever considered that due to your kindness, your junior sister would carry a millennium of vengeance until her death? Guan murmured to himself, lamenting human nature and fate. Su Han's corpse had long been moved by him from the Nianshu cave mansion to the world-excluding cave heaven, currently resting in a cave within the dojo. His soul had gone with the reincarnation long ago, but since his corpse was well preserved, Guan could use causality to seek his reincarnated soul. He hadn't wanted to do so, but seeing that Zhenqin was about to reach her end, he was considering whether to fulfill his disciple's regret. Just as Guan was pondering this, a piercing sound came. Young Yi Xiaoyang, a year older, charged forward with a wooden sword, swooping like a bird through the forest. Guan raised his hand, circled around his own neck, and caught the tip of the wooden sword between his fingers. Yi Xiaoyang was forcibly stopped, landed on his feet, and subconsciously fell backward. He looked up at Guan and shook his numbing right hand, exclaiming, "Master, you are so powerful. Are you a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator?" Guan stood up, taking the wooden sword in hand, and chuckled, "You found out. With your little skill, you still think of ambushing your master?" Yi Xiaoyang straightened his neck and said, "What do you mean by ambush?" "I just wanted to show Master my cultivation progress." At that time, the other four also arrived. Bowing to Guan, Guan taught them not only cultivation techniques but also proper etiquette and the principles of conducting oneself. In just 1 year, he had imbued these 5 with a spirit of chivalry. Even with their cultivation levels and spells, the 5 did not bully the common people. Instead, they supported the weak and opposed the strong. They had already gained a good reputation within 100 miles of their hometown. Seeing that everyone had arrived, Guan tossed the wooden sword to Yi Xiaoyang, saying, "Today I will teach you the sword control technique." Upon hearing this, the 5 were not very excited, as the sword control technique did not sound like a very formidable spell, especially since they practiced sword fighting regularly. Guan saw their lack of interest but did not say much, instead just began teaching the mantra. Inside the mysterious space, young immortal emperor walked towards the celestial Tao golden core, looking at the majestic and spectacular celestial Tao golden core, his eyes not as fervent as before. After the disaster of the battle court, he felt that the celestial Tao golden core could not grant him power to dominate everything, and heaven had no intention of saving all living beings. Whether it was the immortal dynasty or the holy court, most people felt a sense of mission to bear the destiny of all living beings. From the moment they stepped onto the path of cultivation, they had done both good and evil, but all felt that as long as they were powerful, they had to protect all living beings. The young immortal emperor felt the same. He believed he was destined to be the lord of heaven and earth and must protect all living beings. He approached Anhao, who was still meditating, comprehending the celestial Tao golden core. "Your master has left," young immortal emperor spoke. Upon hearing this, Anhao immediately opened his eyes and looked at the young immortal emperor, furrowing his brows. The young immortal emperor continued, "He took a few of his disciples and left the celestial spirit great world, and your junior sister was also taken with him." Hearing this, Anhao's tight brows relaxed, and he asked, "It's good that he left. This world is becoming more chaotic. My master can save heaven and earth once or twice, but he can't always interfere, or sooner or later, someone stronger than him will come. With junior sister following him, I can truly rest assured." Young immortal emperor shifted his gaze to the celestial Tao golden core and said, "And how, I suddenly feel that this golden core doesn't represent the heavenly Tao." And how looked at him, the firelight of the celestial Tao golden light shining on his face, his expression complex. "So, what do you intend to do?" And how asked. He didn't believe in the heavenly Tao either. He pursued the celestial Tao golden core just to rapidly become stronger. The world situation was unpredictable, and despite his strong talent, he also felt a sense of urgency. If he were to die on the path of cultivation, in 1,000, 10,000 years, no one in the world would remember him. Young immortal emperor slowly said, "I want to contend for the theory of heaven." After hearing this, and Hao fell into silence. The mysterious space fell silent along with them, stretching their shadows long. Seasons changed from spring to autumn, and 5 years swiftly passed. The dojo was vast, but few lived there, and each day was quiet, which helped calm Gu An's heart. Every day, teaching Yi Xiaoyang and the other 4, planting flowers and picking herbs, writing books, practicing calligraphy, Guan didn't find it boring at all. Instead, he felt fulfilled. 5 years passed, and Yi Xiaoyang and the 4 others had all reached adulthood and successfully reached the foundation establishment realm. In the scorching summer, within the forest, beside a little stream, Guan looked at the grown-up 5 and felt that time indeed flew by. "Master, I want to change my name and be called Yi Qingshan from now on," Yi Xiaoyang suddenly said, and the other 4 spoke as well. "I want to change too. My name will be Lin Chuan. My name will be Cheng Meng. I want to change my surname too, call me Gu Changsheng." "You shameless." "Well then, I also want the surname Gu Qingdao." Listening to their words, Guan smiled helplessly and didn't stop them. As the 5 changed their names, their fates too changed accordingly. Guan saw their futures. Guan cleared his throat and said, "You have all established your foundations. In a few years, you will surpass your teacher, and I do not wish to be surpassed. Don't come here anymore, go and seek a broader path towards immortality." Hearing this, Yi Qingshan and the others fell silent. They did not argue. In fact, they had wanted to leave for the last 2 years because they had come into contact with cultivators from the immortal cultivation realm and knew how vast it was, making their hearts yearn for it. "Master, Cheng Meng couldn't help but speak. Before she could finish, Guan raised his hand and said, "No need for filial gestures. I came here to isolate myself from the world to cultivate in peace. You have disturbed me for so many years, isn't it time to let me go?" Yi Qingshan immediately knelt down and kowtowed to Guan, the other 4 quickly following suit. Looking at Yi Qingshan, Guan thought of Lu Jiujia. Lu Jiujia's figure merged with Yi Xiaoyang's, transforming into a new person. Guan was not sad, he smiled and accepted their kowtows. Yi Qingshan stood up and said, "Once a teacher, forever a father. When we ascend to immortality and achieve the Tao, we will definitely come back to repay you." The others promised as well, and Guan waved them off with feigned impatience. The 5 bowed and took their leave. A few steps later, Yi Qingshan could not help but look back, just as he did the first time he parted from Guan. He saw Guan under the shade of the trees, the feeling of reluctance from his youth resurfacing. Now, stronger than he was 6 years ago, he was not swayed by emotions, quickly turning back to disappear into the woods with his companions. Guan stretched his arms and yawned. Twisting his neck, he said, "Finally sent them off. See you in 1,000 years." He turned and walked in another direction through the forest. Just as he stepped over the stream, a plump white spirit rat dashed out. It quickly shrank in size and landed on Gu An's shoulder. "Master, are those 5 your disciples?" the white spirit rat asked curiously, still with the voice of a young boy. Guan laughed and said, "Of course they are, why do you ask? You only taught them for a few years before sending them away. I thought they were like the disciples from the 3rd Medicine Valley or Profound Valley. They will come back. They will accompany us for 1,000, 10,000 years, and you will have to be their support." "Really?" The white spirit rat widened its eyes in surprise. Chapter 502 Once yearned for dark clouds cloaked the sky, and a drizzle fell unceasingly. Between the mountains, trees were toppled, pits and holes covered the landscape, reeking of the burnt aftermath that extended for 100 miles, a testament to the battle that had occurred. At this moment, 3 women stood in a standoff, Zhen Qin, Jiang Qiong, and the ghost mother of Ephemera, each bearing injuries. The ghost mother of Ephemera, with disheveled hair, stood amidst the wreckage, her face smeared with blood as she scanned her surroundings, trapped by an array of 8 flags. Outside the formation, Jiang Qiong hovered in the air. Her injuries were not as severe as the ghost mother's, but her heaving chest betrayed her exhaustion. Zhen Qin stood atop a cliff, wielding a treasure sword, surrounded by spinning blades that glittered with golden light. She looked down at the ghost mother of Ephemera with a gaze cold as ice. The ghost mother of Ephemera turned to Jiang Qiong and gritted her teeth. Sect leader, after I have supported you for so many years, do you truly intend to help an outsider kill me? Jiang Qiong sneered back, how do you know that she is an outsider, and you are not? The ghost mother of Ephemera took a deep breath and said, aren't you afraid of the supporting Dao Sword Venerable's return? Don't you know that she is the supporting Dao Sword Venerable's disciple? Faced with Jiang Qiong's mockery, the ghost mother of Ephemera fell silent. Zhen Qin raised her sword and declared, Ghost mother of Ephemera, today I shall avenge my senior brother Su Han. Upon hearing the name Su Han, the face of the ghost mother of Ephemera did not change. She lowered her head, seemingly resigned to her fate. Immediately, Jiang Qiong cast a spell. The flags around the formation fluttered violently, whipping up a fierce wind that stirred chains of cyan to bind the ghost mother of Ephemera, who did not resist. Zhen Qin charged into the formation, her sword slashing through, its frosty light shattering the forest. With one slash, blood spurted and the head of the ghost mother of Ephemera floated into the air. Zhen Qin stood behind the ghost mother of Ephemera, slowly straightening up. She turned her head and saw not only blood spurting from her neck but also flames of a golden blaze. The soul of the ghost mother of Ephemera emerged, unable to escape from her severed neck. Zhen Qin, looking upon this, felt no joy, only a sense of relief followed by an overwhelming fatigue. Years had passed, and she no longer hated the ghost mother of Ephemera. Avenging Su Han had become her obsession. Jiang Qiong descended from the sky, looking at the golden flames at the neck of the ghost mother. She clucked in wonder, are you trying to make her soul disperse? Where did you learn such an evil skill? Zhen Qin, devoid of expression, replied, to deal with an evil demon, one naturally uses evil methods. The soul of the ghost mother of Ephemera struggled in agony, silent, but her twisting form was horrifying to behold. A breeze passed, scattering the golden flames around her neck, which alarmed both Zhen Qin and Jiang Qiong, prompting them to instinctively look around. Let's end it here. This life's grievances have been settled. A voice sounded, and upon hearing it, Zhen Qin stopped mid-sentence. This voice belonged to Guan. Jiang Qiong showed surprise and looked around in search of Guan. The soul of the ghost mother of Ephemera flew out from her corpse. Zhen Qin's sword was no ordinary sword, its slash severed all her lifelines, leaving her either to find a new vessel or wait for reincarnation. Her soul knelt beside her body, as if paying homage to Guan. You have two choices, Guan's voice spoke again, detached as if a god spoke, reincarnation, to let go of this life's karma and start anew the next life, or redemption, to lose your freedom and continue living. The ghost mother hailed from the Ephemera sect. Though not affiliated with the Ephemera sect that caused chaos in the Taizong continent, she had harmed many in her lifetime, Su Han being only one. Even when she founded the Gathering Flower sect, she resorted to wicked methods. The reason why Guan offered her a choice was that, at her core, she believed she acted for the supporting Dao Sword Venerable, that she belonged to him. After following the Sword Venerable, she had indeed restrained her methods and attempted to incline towards goodness. Guan did not wholly shield her, not just because of Su Han, as Su Han had long since severed ties with him, but because she genuinely had committed evils. Stopping evil actions did not erase past deeds like smoke. One must bear the consequences of their choices. The ghost mother of Ephemera immediately looked up and shouted loudly, I am willing to follow you, even if I lose my freedom forever. No sooner had her voice faded than her soul vanished into thin air. Peace then returned to all of great heaven and earth. Jiang Qiong pursed her lips and looked toward Zhen Qin, offering comfort. Regardless, she is considered dead and probably won't be at ease in the future. Zhen Qin took a deep breath and said, I know. Master said she wouldn't let her be free, and she certainly won't. The blood prison great saint was the perfect example. when Guan said to make him a mount for 1,000 years, he indeed suffered for an entire millennium. Seeing that Jin Qin was not fixated on the matter, Jiang Qiong also felt relieved and then asked, "What are your plans now?" Jin Qin looked into the distance and replied, "No plans." After her words fell, her body suddenly leaned backward. Jiang Qiong's eyes widened as she instinctively reached out. However, a hand moved faster to catch Jin Qin's shoulder. Jin Qin looked up and a smile appeared on her face involuntarily. "Master," Jin Qin said weakly. Guan looked at her and sighed softly. Jin Qin had reached the last year of her maximum lifespan. Today's battle had thoroughly drained her vitality. Jiang Qiong was pleased to see Guan, but she didn't speak, choosing to give the time to the master and disciple. Jin Qin was too weak to speak and soon closed her eyes, her hand naturally falling. This made Jiang Qiong frown. Guan looked toward Jiang Qiong and said, "The ghost mother of ephemera is dead, and the Gathering Flowers sect must be personally managed by you." Jiang Qiong nodded and replied, "I know, I will go back soon." She stepped forward, sizing up Guan, and said, "Everyone says you've left the celestial spirit great world, but I didn't think you were still here. I said to myself, how could you leave without telling me?" Facing this woman who had greatly helped him in his early years, Guan said with a smile, "If you ever run into trouble in the future, just call for me in your heart." He could hear Jiang Qiong's heart's voice and knew she was not one to leave the secular world, so he did not invite her to the dojo. Jiang Qiong stared at him and asked, "Can I summon you if I miss you?" Guan rolled his eyes at her and replied, "I am very busy." Jiang Qiong huffed coldly and said, "Take her away quickly, don't let her die." She couldn't see the end of Jin Qin's lifespan, but she could feel her life force rapidly draining, a sure sign of ill. Guan nodded slightly, then disappeared from the spot with Jin Qin. Jiang Qiong didn't leave immediately but walked toward the corpse of the ghost mother of ephemera. After working together for over 1,000 years, she didn't want the ghost mother's body to be left in the wilderness. Jin Qin had a very long dream where she returned to her youth, a time when she, Su Han, and Yi Yan lived carefree in Profound Valley. Back then, they all aspired to reach the Foundation Establishment realm. When Jin Qin awoke, she opened her eyes to the blue sky. She sat up instinctively and then saw Guan sitting at a stone table not far away, with an ice coffin next to her. Seeing Guan, her heart settled down instantly. She stood up immediately, ready to go and pay her respects. But as soon as she stood up, she saw the scene inside the ice coffin and froze completely. She couldn't help but blink, but no matter how many times she blinked, the scene inside remained unchanged. How can this be? Jin Qin became agitated, her body shaking slightly. Inside the ice coffin lay Su Han's body, intact. She looked back at Guan, who was sipping tea, not looking at her. In that moment, Jin Qin's heart was filled with emotion and shame, and 1,000 words were stuck in her throat, unable to be spoken. Chapter 503, A Lifespan of 256 Billion Years. Guan and Jin Qin sat opposite each other and talked for a long time. After seeing Su Han's corpse, the burden and obsession in Jin Qin's heart completely dissipated, and she returned to her usual lively and clever self. The mentor and disciple talked about the past, endlessly, finding it impossible to cover all the old times. However, everything has an end, including life. When dusk fell, Jin Qin looked at Guan and said earnestly, "Master, thank you for your care in this life. As a disciple, I've been incapable and have never repaid you. If there is an afterlife and I am worthy of repaying you, I surely will strive to do so." Unlike the ghost mother of ephemera, who, though dead, was not at the end of her natural life and could still possess another body to be revived, Jin Qin's fate had run its course, without any technique to turn back time. Guan smiled and nodded, saying, "There will be an afterlife." Hearing this, Jin Qin showed a smile, her eyes filled with expectation. She then lay down on the table and whispered, "Master, I feel a bit sleepy. May I sleep here for a while?" Guan nodded and replied, "Sleep, I will stay by your side." Jin Qin closed her eyes, mumbling, "I suddenly miss Master Yi so much." It feels like she has been gone for a very long time. Gu An's hand, which was holding a teacup, paused. He said nothing and continued drinking his tea. After Zhenqin fell asleep, Shenzhen came over. She looked at Zhenqin, about to speak, but her brow furrowed, and she approached Guan, asking, "Are you okay?" She knew Zhenqin's place in Gu An's heart and, thinking of how Yilan, Xiaochuan, and others' deaths affected Guan, she couldn't help but worry. "I am naturally fine," Guan said, looking at her with a smile and gesturing for her to sit down. Shenzhen took a seat, her gaze constantly on Guan. As Guan poured her tea, he said, "Do you think it's absurd? Someone with my cultivation level, yet unable to control life and death?" Shenzhen was secretly surprised. How did Guan see through what she was thinking? She spoke truthfully, "Indeed, you are the strongest being in my mind. It seems like life and death should be trivial matters to you, but," Guan laughed and said, "this means I am not the strongest being. There is a celestial mandate that governs all, and those I help already have good fates. I merely add a touch of splendor. You can glimpse the past and the future, but can you glimpse the celestial mandate?" Glimpse the celestial mandate? Shenzhen fell into deep thought. In fact, she was also confused about her own path of cultivation. She didn't enjoy sitting meditation and qi refinement. She preferred the arts and sought to improve her cultivation level through enlightenment, but inspiration was scarce, and her cultivation level had been stagnant for many years. Seeing that she was seriously contemplating, Guan did not disturb her. He looked towards the horizon, where the slanted sun was like blood, and the seas of clouds seemed ablaze. Looking at the celestial vault, Guan suddenly felt that the future he saw wasn't far enough. How high must one's cultivation level be to see to the end of this universe? Time flies like an arrow, and the years pass like a shuttle, slipping away never to return. A millennium is like a cloud of smoke, with worldly affairs vast like waves. Without the support of supporting Tao's sword Venerable's millennium, the celestial spirit great world faced no calamities from outer heaven, but internal strife remained intense. Ancient secret realms, Taoist fields, and the cave mansions of great powers emerged one after another, causing widespread deadly conflict among the realm's cultivators. Gu An's Taoist field of the beginningless was now filled with medicinal herbs, and to this day, the lifespan provided by these herbs each year had surpassed 20 million years. Located at the edges of the world, the Taoist field of the beginningless on the nine-spirit continent had not faced any disturbance for 1,000 years. However, nearby human race cities were increasing and approaching the Taoist field of the beginningless. In that year, early summer, Guan stood on the edge of a cliff, watching Chen Chuan spar with the blood prison great saint. Chen Chuan, now of the Nirvana realm level, was able to hold his own against the blood prison great saint, who was at the level of the loose immortal realm. The two combatants clashed in the sky, Guan establishing a barrier that allowed them to fight to their heart's content without affecting the dojo. After watching for a while, Guan lost interest and called up his attribute panel to take a look. Name, Guan, lifespan, 3/155/25, 660, 408, 118, physique, primordial infinite body, cultivation level, innate golden immortal realm perfection, a lifespan of 256 billion years. Guan planned to break through after reaching a lifespan of 100 billion years. After all, according to the trends of the great heaven and earth, the celestial spirit great world would be engulfed in slaughter for the next 10,000 years unless there was intervention from powers beyond the heavens. Such slaughter was not meaningless. Guan could feel that the number of all living beings in the world had decreased by 10% compared to 1,000 years ago, but this also gave rise to more talents and great powers. The most famous battle in these 1,000 years was the one between the young immortal emperor and the Zhu Luo sword monarch for the theory of heaven, which ended in a crushing defeat for the sword monarch, who fled back to the great Hong sword heaven, while the young immortal emperor, after collecting 9 volumes of the theory of heaven, went into seclusion. Guan peered into the young immortal emperor's fate through Enhao's Tao Destruction Destiny seal and found that the emperor's destiny was transforming and his cultivation level was rising steadily. The young immortal emperor, being the Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal, meant that the holy court had almost no chance of victory, and Zhu Shi, the saint heaven reincarnation, was still wandering in the mortal world. Even after regaining her past life memories, she had no intentions of returning to the Holy Court. A figure approached Guan. It was the ghost mother of Ephemera. She looked just like she did in life, but in reality, her body was made of flowers and plants, no longer human. Now, she was responsible for managing the medicinal herbs in Guan's dojo, since the others were occupied with cultivation, and an Xin had long since lost interest in managing affairs. "Master, we are running out of seeds," the ghost mother of Ephemera said softly. Having experienced life and death, and after 1,000 years of settling, her temperament had become much more stable, starkly different from her past as the deputy sect master of the Gathering Flower sect. Guan glanced at Qin Chuan and said, "There will be new seeds tomorrow. You should go and cultivate for now." The ghost mother of Ephemera immediately bowed and took her leave. "Wait a moment." Guan spoke, and upon hearing him, the ghost mother subconsciously turned around, only to have a secret manual fall into her embrace. She accepted the manual and saw at a glance that it was a cultivation technique. "Strive to reach nirvana as soon as possible. That way, you can serve me for a longer time," Guan said before turning and walking away. A ripple of emotion disturbed the tranquility of the ghost mother of Ephemera's eyes. She watched Guan's retreating figure, her thoughts unknown. Guan walked out toward the dojo. 5 acquaintances were to arrive today, and he needed to see them. The 5 acquaintances were Enchanting and the others, whom Guan had taken as disciples because Enchanting was the reincarnation of Lu Jiujia. After 1,000 years of adventure and countless trials, fortunately, all 5 were still alive. They had encountered an invincible adversary and had to return to their homeland. Guan could overhear their conversation. These friends were contemplating establishing a sect in their hometown to cultivate their own power and to benefit the locals. Although the relatives they remembered were no longer alive, the land had not changed. Guan listened as these 5 discussed their past experiences of cultivating with him, and Gu Changsheng, that youngster, was actually sentimental, wondering if his master was still alive. All 5 believed that Guan had passed away, for in their memory, Guan was merely a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator. Unless they faced a cultivation crisis or had stirred up enemies, why would anyone seek such a secluded place to hide? At the very least, it indicated that Guan had no mighty background or extraordinary talent. Reflecting on their master, they felt regret, wishing they had had the chance to repay him. Chapter 504, Never Give Up in the Woods. Yi Qingshan, Lin Chuan, Qingmeng, Gu Changsheng, and Gu Qingdao moved forward while chatting, looking at the forest which felt both familiar and strange to them. They talked about the past millennium with deep emotion. Suddenly, Qingmeng said, "Do you think it's possible that Master is still alive?" At these words, the other 4 fell silent. Of course, they wished Guan were alive, but when they had left, the Master was still a cultivator at the Foundation Establishment realm. Judging by the cultivation speed he described, it seemed highly unlikely he could survive 1,000 years. Unless, of course, the Master had deceived them. After all, they had never truly understood his cultivation level. "Isn't finding him one of the reasons for our return?" Gu Qingdao, the youngest yet most composed of the 5, spoke up. He always felt that their master was not like ordinary people. After roaming the great heaven and earth for 1,000 years and witnessing countless exceptional individuals, he still felt his master was in no way inferior to any of them. Yi Qingshan spoke, "Now that we're back, establishing a sect can wait. Let's first look for our master." His words met with the agreement of the others. Even if their master were no longer of this world, spending several years in search for him was worthwhile. Gradually, their conversation turned to their sworn enemies. Mentioning their enemies made their teeth itch. Their disciples and friends had been slaughtered by these foes, and they themselves had narrowly escaped death. Even with all the hatred, they had no means of revenge, as their enemies were cultivators of the immortal Tao realm, backed by a major sect. As they talked, they came to a small stream and were struck dumb. Lin Chuan couldn't help but ask, could this be the same stream from 1,000 years ago? How is it still here? I Ching Shan was somewhat bewildered, responding, "A millennium isn't enough for the great heaven and earth to undergo massive change, especially since there hasn't been sect conflict or demon mischief around here. Naturally, there wouldn't be much alteration." They looked around, recalling the past intricacies of their lives. After a while, the sound of footsteps came from deep within the woods across the stream, drawing the attention of I Ching Shan and the others. They hadn't sensed the presence of humans or demons, so the sound of footsteps was certainly startling. Looking intently, they saw a young woman in green clothes, carrying a bamboo basket, walking out from the depths of the forest. Her beautiful face and pure aura were like that of a celestial maiden descending to the human world, leaving I Ching Shan and the others stunned. The newcomer was an Exian. 1,000 years had passed, and an Exian had entered the Nirvana realm, her aura transcending the ordinary, while I Ching Shan and the others were still stuck at the Mahayana realm, unable to find the opportunity for nirvana. An Exian stood before the stream, smiling at them, awakening them from their reverie as they hurriedly bowed and made a fist-in-palm salute. "Senior, I am I Ching Shan. 1,000 years ago, I cultivated here for several years. We have now returned in hopes of finding our master. Have we perhaps offended you in any way?" I Ching Shan spoke first. After all, if someone had claimed this area over the past millennium, they would have no choice but to leave. He couldn't fathom Anzin's cultivation level, thus, he was sure she was an entity of the immortal Tao realm. Even just being a great cultivator at the lowest nirvana realm would be far beyond their ability to provoke. An Exian laughed, "I have been cultivating here for 1,000 years. Could your master's surname be Gu and his given name?" At her words, the five displayed great surprise and answered affirmatively, eagerly inquiring about Gu An's relationship with her. An Exian answered, "I have indeed met him. He is currently in closed-door cultivation. I have established a dojo in this area. I share a deep connection with him, so if you need assistance in the future, feel free to reach out to me." Hearing that their master was in closed-door cultivation, the five were overjoyed, thanking an Exian for her kindness. I Ching Shan wanted to ask more about Gu An's situation, but an Exian shook her head, saying no more, and he could only let the matter rest. "Senior, we wish to establish a sect nearby to aid mortals in their immortal cultivation. Will we be disturbing you?" Cheng Meng asked cautiously. An Exian lifted her hand, pointing to the stream before them. "As long as your sect does not cross this stream, you won't be causing a disturbance." Guan had informed her that I Ching Shan was the reincarnation of Lu Jiujia, so she also anticipated what kind of sect I Ching Shan would establish. Upon hearing Anzin's response, all five felt completely relieved. An Exian turned and walked back the way she had come, leaving them with parting words, "The great Tao is long, do not become blinded by hatred. Your own cultivation is what matters most." These words startled the five, and they remained shocked until an Exian vanished from their sight. Only then did they come back to their senses. Gu Changxing asked carefully, "Did she overhear our conversation, or did she divine it?" It is said that a great power of the immortal Tao can look at a person and know their past and future. I Ching Shan took a deep breath and said, "She must have deduced it. Perhaps our master came here originally in search of her." The other four also felt this made sense and held an Exian in even greater awe. They didn't linger any longer and turned to leave. Now that they were certain their master was still alive, they could begin their own plans. On the other side, an Exian walked deeper into the woods, and when she saw Gu An's figure, a smile appeared on her face. She quickened her pace, abandoning the demeanor of a celestial maiden and adopted the lively, joyful posture of a young girl. "Master, how did I do?" An Exian asked proudly as she arrived in front of Guan. Guan stood in front of the bushes, a butterfly perching on his right hand. He stared at the butterfly and said softly, "Not bad, you have a third of my charm." An Exian became even more proud and curiously asked, "Master, aren't you afraid they might establish another supreme sect?" Guan replied, "As long as we remain in the celestial spirit great world and continue to interact with others, such things are inevitable. Let them be. At least for the sects they create, we have no responsibility to protect them. The prosperity they create can also serve as entertainment for you when you are bored, and experiencing fate and encounters among the mortal realm is also a form of cultivation. He lifted his right hand, and the butterfly flew away. Then, he and an Exian headed toward the Taoist field of the beginningless. That makes sense, being in seclusion for too long can indeed become dull. However, I've agreed to spar with Celestial Demon Child in 100 years. I certainly don't want to lose to her again, said an Exian as she followed beside Guan. She got along very well with Celestial Demon Child. Their rivalry was healthy, spurring each other on. No matter who won or lost, neither would take it lightly. She told me the same thing, Guan said with a smile. There weren't many people in the Taoist field of the beginningless, but none of them were the quiet type. He thoroughly enjoyed the lifestyle there. When bored, he could visit Immortal Seeking Island or Human World Peak, or venture elsewhere. There was always a destination. Leaving the Supreme Sect didn't mean he was cut off from the world. The master and disciple chatted casually as they walked back to the dojo. On the other side, deep in the cosmos, a majestic world gate stood in the void, as if at the center of the universe, radiating an endless ancient aura. A fluctuation emerged from within the gate, and a figure stepped out. This was a man in black, enveloped in a crimson aura, his head adorned with a crown resembling a mystical beast, and a belt embedded with dragon scales. He radiated a powerful presence. After stepping through the world gate, his gaze fell upon a figure beside it. He turned and saluted, "Senior, it has been many years. Are you well?" The figure he addressed was none other than the Celestial Spirit God. The Celestial Spirit God shone with intense brightness, its shape visible but its visage unseen. "It seems the battle court is determined to continue this conflict," the Celestial Spirit God said, its tone indifferent. The man in black cracked a smile and said, "There's no choice. The karma between us and the Long clan is too deep, irreconcilable." The Celestial Spirit God did not respond, and silence fell over the void. After a moment's hesitation, the man in black asked, "Senior, if the Celestial Court were to reappear in the human world, would you consider returning?" As soon as he finished speaking, his expression changed drastically, and he trembled all over. The Celestial Spirit God did not stand, but a terrifying intent to kill locked onto the man in black, leaving him quaking with fear. Do not attempt to test the will of a god, or else even the battle court cannot keep you safe. The voice of the Celestial Spirit God rang out, and the man in black felt the world spin, his body as if plunging into an unfathomable abyss, his sight blurring, and his divine soul overturning. After a while, the man in black opened his eyes to find himself upon a meteor. He stood up, peered into the distance, and could not see the world gate. He was silently alarmed. Such a terrifying power of the heavenly Tao. Is this the force that suppresses a great thousand world? Chapter 505, Long Family Destiny Pattern. Celestial Tao merits I Ching Shan and his 4 companions acted quickly. They first chose a mountain to construct buildings, and then began recruiting children with spirit roots. In just 1 year, they had gathered over 300 young boys and girls, and then began to earnestly teach them cultivation. 100 years later, after the first batch of disciples had grown up, they officially started to establish their sect, named Qiankuan Sect. The Qiankuan Sect. There were many sects with this name in the world, but I Ching Shan wanted there to be only one Qiankuan Sect. His ambitious declaration at the founding ceremony was overheard by Guan at the dojo. Guan just smiled lightly, not paying much attention. He didn't even bother to calculate the destiny of the Qiankuan Sect anymore, choosing to leave it as a mystery, as a bit of color in life. The seasonal patterns in the celestial spirit great world were broadly the same. At the start of autumn this year, Guan lay under a tree, hands pillowed behind his head, eyes closed. It seemed as though he was sleeping, but he was actually observing the Supreme Sect. After all, he had spent the earlier half of his life in the Supreme Sect, and even after 1,000 years, Guan still held some sentiment for it. He was currently paying attention to Long Qing. Before leaving the Third Medicine Valley, Guan had begun to release the Guiyuan Divine Tao within Long Qing's body, allowing him to gradually regain his qi refinement talent. Long Qing, born in the Nirvana realm, had completely recovered his true strength after 1,000 years of cultivation. Under his leadership, the Third Medicine Valley had become a very powerful force within the Supreme Sect. Everyone knew that he was raised by Guan. With him there, the bond between the Supreme Sect and the supporting Tao Sword Venerable would not break. Therefore, even those whose cultivation levels were several greater realms higher than his would still try to please him. Unlike Gu An's style, Long Qing turned the Third Medicine Valley into a power-chasing valley, losing the leisurely and peaceful atmosphere of the past. At this moment, someone was persuading Long Qing. This person was a profound Yuan-free immortal who came from the World Gate. Guan initially thought he was here to cause trouble, especially since he carried the thick aura of the battle court. However, this person had lingered outside Celestial Spirit Great World for decades and then infiltrated the Supreme Sect, where he stayed for several decades before finally approaching Long Qing. He was currently explaining to Long Qing about the strength of the Long clan and their deep connections with the battle court. Previously, Yi Tianji had shown Long Qing many images from past lives, but those were only fragments of memories. When Long Qing truly understood his heritage, his feelings were incredibly complex. Inside Long Qing's loft, he sat on a chair, silent for a long time. The profound Yuan-free immortal waited for him to accept his heritage. Long Qing remained silent for half an hour, then he looked up at the man in black and asked, "You've told me so much, but who are you?" The man in black smiled and said, "My name is Candle Star, from the Battle Court, a disciple of the Lord of the War Court. I have lived far beyond your imagination, and much of the history I've told you, I witnessed personally." Hearing this, Long Qing frowned. He was not frightened into standing up. Instead, he stared at Candle Star and asked, "If you come from the battle court, why awaken my hatred towards it?" Candle Star laughed and said, "The battle court has strayed, always trying to please the immortal gods. I am not satisfied with that. I prefer the battle court under Emperor Longxin's rule. That was the true battle court worthy of battle's name." As he spoke, his eyes revealed longing and excitement. Long Qing's frown deepened. He could not see through Candle Star's intentions, nor could he discern whether his words were true. Candle Star looked at Long Qing, raised his hands, and suddenly said excitedly, "Do you know why the battle court targets your Long clan? It's not because you are the legitimate one, but because they fear your bloodline. No, they want to obtain it." Long Qing's expression changed, but before he could speak, Candle Star continued, "The real founder of the battle court was Emperor Longxin's father, Long Zhan, also known as Celestial Dragon Emperor. Without experiencing the era's tribulation of the Great Thousand World, he grew rapidly. In every battle, his strength surged substantially. It is said that once after slaughtering an entire great heaven and earth, he managed to cross the 9 heavens of the immortal path in a remarkably short time. Emperor Longxin's talent was also immense, but he turned against the Celestial Dragon Emperor and thereafter ceased creating slaughter." Candle Star grew more excited as he spoke, his eyes even gleaming. He could not only grow stronger through slaughter but also resist heavenly might. Even crossing the 9 heavens of the immortal path, he managed to successfully cross the tribulation within a day. Such talent, such destiny pattern, is enough to drive the 3,000 Great Thousand Worlds mad. Candle Star's intense gaze made Long Qing uncomfortable. Long Qing couldn't help but say, "Are you suggesting that the Long clan inherited such talent and destiny pattern?" Exactly, the grandson of Emperor Longxin once inherited such talent, and that was also why the Long clan headed toward decline. Candle Star replied, his gaze sizing up Long Qing with greed filling his eyes. Long Qing snorted, "So you want to possess me?" Candle Star quickly shook his head, "No, no, no, the talent of the Long clan, and you who cannot be killed no matter what, obviously your clan hides a great cause and effect. The fools of the war court can't see this clearly. Of course, the most important thing is that I also believe in my own talent. I want you to retake control of the war court, and together we can establish everlasting great celestial Tao merits." Long Qing furrowed his brows again. He muttered, "With my current cultivation level, how many years would it take to overthrow the war court?" Candle Star answered, "If it's fast, several tens of millions of years, if slow, several hundreds of millions of years. Of course, you have to survive and you cannot slack off. Tens of millions of years? Long Qing widened his eyes, unable to remain calm. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Are you joking with me? Even if it really took that many years, could you wait that long?" Candlestar huffed, "Why can't I wait? I also need time to cultivate. Don't feel that it's too long. To reach my current cultivation level, closing my eyes, 1,000,000 years pass in an instant, not to mention those who are in seclusion seeking enlightenment. For them, even 10 million years are not worth mentioning. The reason you haven't felt time passing so quickly is that this great thousand world is currently undergoing an era transition. The heavenly Tao promotes the movement of heaven and earth, and living beings are continually fighting. You've experienced too many changes." Long Qing fell into silence. Candlestar then looked around, examining the furnishings within the room. Long Qing took a deep breath and asked, "Since that's the case, how will you assist me?" Candlestar turned his head towards him, smiling, "You first become the sect leader of the Supreme Sect. By then, let the Supreme Sect unify the world. After the era of tribulation ends, and the celestial merits fall onto the Supreme Sect, as its sect leader, and me as the vice sect leader, we will receive vast celestial Tao merits, aiding us in our enlightenment. In the silent extinction domain, there is a world gate that will limit the war court, preventing them from invading in large numbers. Previously, your master killed Yi Tianji, which has already placed the war court in a dilemma, causing internal divisions. Now is the best time for us to develop our sect." After hearing this, Long Qing's brows gradually smoothed. Elsewhere. Far in the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan listened to their conversation, and he was not too surprised because he had previously guessed why the war court was hunting the Long clan. The silent destruction god emperor used a person from the Long clan to cultivate the celestial dragon reincarnation dharma aspect, which was the best proof. He was more interested in the celestial Tao merits mentioned by Candlestar. If Long Qing and Candlestar could indeed lead the Supreme Sect to become the ruler of the world, it would be a good thing, providing Guan with a sense of presence as well. Of course, if Long Qing were to go astray, Guan would not ignore it. He had protected Long Qing, so he had the responsibility to keep an eye on Long Qing, to prevent him from walking the path of slaughter followed by his previous life and ancestors. Guan stood up and headed towards the mountain forests. With the establishment of the Qiankuan sect, the sect had been aggressively recruiting disciples, and the number of disciples had quickly surpassed 10,000. With so many people, there were bound to be some who caused trouble. Indeed, someone was heading towards the forbidden area designated by the Qiankuan sect, approaching the Taoist field of the beginningless. Guan felt it necessary to arrange a guard, pretending to be a hermit in deep mountains. An Exian, who usually needed to focus on cultivation, didn't have the time to watch continuously. He had just entered the mountain forest when a streak of white light sped over and landed on his shoulder. It was the white spirit rat. "Master, where are you going?" the white spirit rat curiously asked. Guan laughed heartily. "You run around all day, full of energy, and you don't cultivate. How about becoming the Demon King?" The white spirit rat's eyes lit up at hearing this. It asked, "Really? Come, I'll transform some demons, and you can choose from them. From now on, you'll be in charge of guarding around the Taoist field, and you will not allow anyone to trespass without permission." "That's great, Master, I definitely won't let you be disappointed," the white spirit rat said excitedly. Even though it had shrunk its rat body, it still looked chubby, laughing like a trembling white fur ball. Guan began instructing the white spirit rat on what it could and couldn't do. This guy was too mischievous. Rules must be established to prevent it from becoming utterly lawless. He couldn't allow it to become like the Cyan Bull demon under Lord Lao Zi of the Great Monad. Chapter 506. The strongest sword. Time passed swiftly, and another 200 years went by. Guan enlightened 100 demons, taught personally by the white spirit rat. An Exian introduced them to Yi Qingshan and others, enabling the white spirit rat to quickly establish a relationship with the Qiankuan sect. Under the guidance of Yi Qingshan and his peers, the Qiankuan sect occasionally presented gifts to the White Spirit Rat and its subordinate demons, making the relationship between the two parties increasingly close. After 200 years, the Qiankuan sect had risen to power, becoming a first-class sect in the Nine-Spirit continent with aspirations of sweeping across the world. With 9 Mahayana practitioners, the Qiankuan sect was truly invincible in this land, and unifying the continent was only a matter of time as long as no forces from overseas intervened. Conflicts continued between heaven and earth, and the spiritual energy from nature surged towards the heart of the continent, prompting the strong practitioners to follow it. This weakened the immortal cultivation atmosphere in the peripheral regions. That was the case for the Nine-Spirit continent and neighboring continents. Almost no creatures from the immortal Tao realm visited this area, though many lower realm beings wanted to spend their remaining life here. On this day, inside the Taoist field of the beginningless, by a lake in the mountains, Guan was fishing. Blood Prison Great Saint stood by, curiously watching the lake surface, and couldn't help but ask, "Master, are these fish of a special kind?" In his mind, the master was the strongest. In his view, the master wouldn't engage in meaningless activities. Even the leisurely ones would, upon reflection, hold significance, just like how the master enjoyed reading and writing, which Shenzhen emulated and then attained enlightenment. There were also the games of Go and chess created by the master, which could enhance one's comprehension of the Tao. Even gardening held many subtleties, allowing for deeper contemplation. Even serving as a bullock, 1,000 years of reflection had helped the Blood Prison Great Saint shed his impetuous and arrogant temperament. This lake was newly created by Guan yesterday. When he went to the hidden spirit palace to gather medicinal herbs, he brought back several small fish, all of which were released into the lake. Guan replied, "Nothing special, they are just ordinary fish." Ordinary fish? The Blood Prison Great Saint was even more confused. He carefully observed the lake in front of him, convinced that it must hold some profound mystery, though he still couldn't see through it. Little did he know, Guan simply wanted to fish for the sake of fishing. His fishhook was formed from concentrated mana, and once it stuck to a fish's mouth, the fish couldn't escape but wouldn't be hurt either. He merely wanted to experience the process of fishing. After leaving the Supreme Sect, although he had a broader dojo, Guan still had idle moments. Although he didn't practice chi absorption, he still wouldn't do nothing when idle. He gained insights into the natural world through seemingly mundane activities. As long as he observed naturally occurring phenomena, he could sense the great Tao. Having reached the innate golden immortal realm, Guan didn't feel invincible and continued to pursue the great Tao. The evolution of his lifespan eliminated the need for chi absorption cultivation, making him treasure the time for attaining enlightenment even more. Guan was sitting on a stone with the Blood Prison Great Saint standing beside him, both quietly observing the lake. Sunlight fell on them and blended with the landscape, creating a peaceful and beautiful picture. After a long while, a figure descended from the sky and landed beside Guan. It was Qin Chuan. The 1,000-year-old Qin Chuan had also reached the Nirvana realm. From Nirvana to the loose immortal realm, the time required was incomparable to that of the mortal realm, so those at Nirvana realm around Guan still hadn't reached the loose immortal realm. Not everyone's talent compared to Enhao's, and Hao's opportunities could even be said to be unique, unrivaled in the world. "Master, I sense a sword," Qin Chuan spoke, his eyes filled with excitement. Before Guan could respond, the Blood Prison Great Saint curiously asked, "What sword?" Since arriving at the Taoist field of the beginningless, the Blood Prison Great Saint hadn't sensed any dangerous aura. He hadn't felt the formidable sword, but he knew Qin Chuan's destiny pattern was extraordinary, so he was very curious. "I can't explain clearly, but I feel a sword has descended upon this world, continuously emitting sword cries as if waiting for me to seek it," answered Qin Chuan, pondering and recalling his previous sensations as he spoke. His words made the Blood Prison Great Saint even more curious. When Guan moved from the Supreme Sect to this place, he didn't bring Long Qing or other close disciples but brought Qin Chuan. The Blood Prison Great Saint always felt that Qin Chuan's talent might match that of Enhao or Yang Jian. In fact, Qin Chuan had indeed shown dazzling comprehension in the sword Tao, although the Blood Prison Great Saint felt it still wasn't enough. There is indeed such a sword, coming from outer heaven. It is the strongest sword in the world. Possessing it qualifies one to contend for the world. Not just you, but anyone who diligently practices the sword Tao will sense it, Guan responded, his gaze fixed on the lake's surface, never wavering. Hearing this, Chen Chuan frowned. Blood Prison Great Saint widened his eyes and asked, "This is clearly a conspiracy. Is another power from outer heaven about to attack?" Throughout the previous cataclysms of heaven and earth, it was always the forces from outer heaven that initiated them. The conflicts between the immortal dynasty and the Holy Court were never a threat to all living beings. "It's the work of the great Hong Sword Heaven behind Zhu Luo Sword Monarch," Guan answered. Hearing about Zhu Luo Sword Monarch, both Blood Prison Great Saint and Chen Chuan exchanged glances. TSK, could it be that guy lost to Yang Immortal Emperor and couldn't accept it? Blood Prison Great Saint guessed with schadenfreude. He disliked the way Zhu Luo Sword Monarch carried himself, a demeanor that screamed invincibility, which he found repulsive. Chen Chuan, on the other hand, remained silent as he began to feel the sword again. For some reason, he always felt that the sword was of special significance to him, but his master's words left him confused. If others felt the same way he did, then indeed, they shouldn't go. But was it really the same? Gu An's fishing rod began to move. He waited a few moments before suddenly yanking it, pulling a large yellow fish into his hands. He unhooked the fish and released it back into the lake. This action made Chen Chuan pause. He took a deep breath, then walked to a patch of grass and sat down. He took out his own sword, placed it on his lap, and quietly contemplated. Blood Prison Great Saint looked at him with a curious expression. Guan remained silent, just the corners of his mouth lifted. In his eyes, that number 1 divine sword was nothing exceptional. Chen Chuan didn't need to compete. By cultivating by his side, he would eventually surpass that sword. However, "Senior Brotherly, you're not going to ask me to take action, are you?" Guan looked up towards the horizon with a teasing gaze. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, above an endless ocean, dressed in black, Leia stood on a black eagle, soaring across the sea of clouds, with divine exotic immortal spirit perched on his shoulder, gripping his hair, shivering. Do we really have to steal it? The aura of this sword is very powerful. It will definitely attract terrifyingly strong individuals. Don't forget, my master has already left the celestial spirit great world. Divine exotic immortal spirit couldn't help but ask. It had deliberately conveyed the news of Gu An's departure to Leia, hoping that Leia would be less reckless in the future. Its method indeed worked. Leia had been peaceful for 1,000 years, but today, he was embarking on an adventure again. Leia's eyes were cold as he said, "How can I become stronger without striving for it? By meditating in seclusion? Don't worry, if it really comes to dying, I'll let you go. I won't drag you down." His heart, though, was aflame. Because he felt that the sword was calling to him, he was the true master recognized by the sword. Divine exotic immortal spirit couldn't help but say, "Do you really think I could escape if it comes to that?" Leia glanced at it and said, "Then why don't you leave now?" "I must go regardless. Perhaps this is my only chance to catch up to Enhao." Divine exotic immortal spirit rolled its eyes, retorted irritably, "You're always talking about Enhao. It's been years without any news of him. He might already be dead. Don't always fantasize about how strong your opponents are, and then force yourself. That's impossible. He can't be dead. His cultivation level must be outrageous. With my current abilities, I doubt I could withstand even one of his moves." Leia shook his head. No matter how far the places he had visited or how strong the people he had met, he always believed that Enhao was the foremost talent in heaven and earth. He felt that fate had made him encounter Enhao, and that was a blessing to him. With Enhao there, he would never be complacent about his achievements. He would always feel not strong enough and thus continue to strive. Divine exotic immortal spirit scratched its head, feeling that Leia was delusional and beyond persuasion, but it was not panicking. After all these years, it suddenly wanted to see its master, and Leia should be able to help it. Chapter 507, Heaven and Earth Tao Fruit, celestial beings. Guan could hear the divine exotic immortal spirit's heart voice. Although he could maintain spiritual communication with it, he rarely paid attention to it. The main reason was that the divine exotic immortal spirit was too annoying. Guan had responded before, and as a result, it chattered constantly, bothering him without end. Guan was neither worried about Leia going to seize the sword, nor was he afraid that Leia would cause any trouble for him. He would only save Li Ya's life, but wouldn't help him seize the sword. Saving a life was not difficult for Guan, as simple as blowing out a breath. Guan continued fishing until, after an hour, he finally stood up and left. The blood prison great saint hurriedly followed his pace, while Chen Xuan continued to stay by the lake, his eyes tightly closed, comprehending his own sword intent. He wanted to resist the attraction of that sword, feeling that if he could withstand it, his sword Dao would ascend a level. Tens of miles away, and Xing Tian was practicing qi absorption on a cliff, the breeze blowing through his hair. Another 10 miles ahead, his master Jiang Shi was sowing seeds. Jiang Shi didn't use spells, but planted them by hand, treating it as a form of cultivation. Looking to the east, the celestial demon child was discussing the Tao with the ghost mother of ephemera, exchanging cultivation insights. Others were in seclusion within their respective cave mansions, all steadfastly advancing on their own paths of cultivation. The winds rolling through the Taoist field of the beginningless swept toward the celestial vault, carrying away the seasons. By the next late summer, the battle over the divine sword inevitably erupted. The sword drew sword cultivators from all over, and Leia, at the Nirvana realm, couldn't even get involved. Let alone having Guan save him, he didn't even have the qualification to see the divine sword. The battle between two divine immortals of wondrous dharma prevented him and the divine exotic immortal spirit from moving forward, forcing them to wait in the distance. Sadly, as time passed, Leia not only couldn't advance but was also pushed back because higher-level sword cultivators joined the fray. The setting sun cast a pall over an opulent city where Zhu Shi, dressed in yellow robes, strolled along the street. She looked just as young as ever, like a girl of 16 or 17, her eyes shining as she looked around with interest. No one could have imagined that this seemingly innocent girl was the Xingtian of the Holy Court, once the strongest being of heaven and earth. Just as Zhu Shi became engrossed with the sights on either side of the street, a figure approached her. "Young friend, please halt." A laugh came from ahead, and Zhu Shi fixed her gaze before stopping in her tracks. She saw a young monk draped in a kasaya blocking her path. This person was none other than the immortal seeker who had taught the Taoist expansion skill. It was because the Taoist expansion skill had advanced to the innate reincarnation skill that Guan was able to help the people he cared about extend their ultimate lifespan. Zhu's eyes' smile vanished, and she calmly looked at the immortal seeker. The immortal seeker chuckled. "The humble monk observes that you possess extraordinary destiny. Would you like to ascend to immortality? The humble monk can assist you." Zhu Shi focused on him, saying, "You, a monk, refer to yourself as humble monk? Do you think you're credible?" Of course the humble monk is credible. His Majesty Saint Heaven is nurtured by the celestial spirit and destiny. Even as a reincarnated being, a pair of eyes can see through everything, can't they? The immortal seeker said with a chuckle, causing Zhu Shi to furrow her brow. When he mentioned Saint Heaven, a passing cultivator threw a suspicious glance at him, but quickly disappeared with the flow of the crowd. Zhu Shi and the immortal seeker faced each other amidst the throng. They were out of place in this world and indifferent to the gazes of the people. Zhu's eyes gradually became piercing, as if she had transformed into someone else. She exuded the aura of someone who reigned supreme, looking down at the immortal seeker, asking, "A person from heaven?" The immortal seeker laughed. "Your Majesty is indeed formidable." Zhu Shi lifted her right foot and took a step forward. As her toes touched the ground, the world suddenly changed. The streets and the people coming and going all vanished, and they found themselves in a dim, desolate mountain wilderness, with dense clouds in the sky and faint thunder rumbling. Immortal Seeker did not panic and continued to smile at Zhu Shi. "Are you sure you have what I'm looking for?" Zhu Shi asked, and as she lifted her right hand, the earth around them split open, and roots emerged from all directions, swiftly intertwining in the sky to form a huge sword that pointed straight at Immortal Seeker. This wooden sword was more colossal than the mountains between heaven and earth. It seemed to occupy half of the sky upon its appearance. You're looking for the heaven and earth Tao fruit. What you want isn't just to unify the current celestial spirit great world, is it? What you desire is the entire celestial spirit great world, right? Immortal Seeker answered. She narrowed her eyes, but did not respond. Immortal Seeker continued, the heaven and earth Tao fruit is bound to appear sooner or later, but now there's already a presence stronger than even the free immortal. Your Majesty, how will you snatch it then? She huffed, so you're saying, you can't give me anything and you've merely come to remind me? Not at all, Immortal Seeker said leisurely. I have come to save your life. The celestial Tao golden core is bait left by the person from the world gate, and the heaven and earth Tao fruit is even more taboo. If one's realm is insufficient, merely touching the heaven and earth Tao fruit will lead to being devoured. It contains even more horrifying cause and effect, causes even the person from the world gate does not know of. She squinted and asked, then tell me, how high must one's realm be to touch it? To reach the pinnacle of what the free immortal can achieve, Immortal Seeker's smile turned mischievous. She frowned and asked, above the 9th heaven of the immortal path, there's still the level of free immortal? That's right. There are 3 free immortal levels above it, and none of those strongest beings who appeared in the last few thousand years have reached that realm, not even the supporting Tao sword venerable. Hearing Immortal Seeker mention the supporting Tao sword venerable, Zhu Zai's face became grim. Even though she had fully recovered the memories of her previous life, she still kept the gratitude of this life's mentor-disciple relationship in her heart and respected Guan from her core. In her view, Guan was an old predecessor from beyond the skies, with a cultivation level far surpassing hers. Coupled with the fact that he had taught her, she naturally held respect for him. Even the supporting Tao sword venerable was not qualified to touch the heaven and earth Tao fruit. She fell into silence. Immortal Seeker quietly watched her. After a long while, he finally said, I have a method that can help you avoid being devoured. She looked up at him with a skeptical face. Immortal Seeker continued, what you need to do is surpass the 9 heavens of the immortal path. Possess the competence to traverse the world freely. Can you achieve that? She replied coldly, I have long been able to do so, but I've deliberately suppressed my realm. I can sense an almighty existence outside this world watching me. If I break through, I will encounter unexpected disasters. Some free immortals need thousands, tens of thousands of cycles of reincarnation tribulations, but I only need one life. Immortal Seeker was taken aback, clearly shocked by her words. He took a deep breath and said in admiration, worthy of being the child of heaven and earth chosen by the destiny of celestial spirit. In that case, I will pass on a cultivation technique to you. Practice it first, then break through. Zhu Zai's right hand dropped, and the huge wooden sword suspended in the dim celestial vault dissipated like smoke and clouds. Who exactly are you, and why do you want to help me? She stared intently at Immortal Seeker, hoping to get an answer. Immortal Seeker turned, looking towards the horizon, and said, I indeed come from above, but I do not affiliate myself with those self-important folks. The reason I assist you is merely to fulfill a wish. My disciple died in this great thousand world. She asked in surprise, the death of your disciple requires all this scheming? Do you need my help for revenge? Immortal Seeker glanced at her and said, merging with the heaven and earth Tao fruit will be enough to fill the regret in my heart. Zhu Zai's brows were tightly locked, still somewhat unclear. But Immortal Seeker no longer elaborated. Suddenly, she seemed to realize something. Her expression changed drastically as she looked incredulously at Immortal Seeker. Chapter 508, 9 Extreme Sacred Heart Sword, The Legend of Yang Xian Human World Peak, Heaven-Defining Peak Above. Heaven and Earth Tao Fruit. Celestials. Within the courtyard at the mountain summit, Guan sat in a rocking chair with his eyes closed, musing to himself. Meng Lang's conversation with the Immortal Seeker had reached his ears. With his current cultivation level of innate golden immortal realm, no movement within the celestial spirit great world could escape his notice, especially concerning Zhu Shi, whom he had always been keeping an eye on. Guan had always had an impression of the immortal seeker but had not expected him to have such a background. What exactly was the world above like? The self-assured individuals mentioned by the immortal seeker, could they be the immortal gods pursuing him to the extreme? Celestial Tao Golden Core, Heaven and Earth Tao Fruit. Interesting, could it be that the previous celestial spirit great world was transformed by some great power, and after the demise of that being, the world shattered, creating today's vast universe? If that was the case, what level of cultivation did that being have? Upon reaching the innate golden immortal realm, Gu Ans Tao Fruit could also create a world, confirming that the existence was at least of the innate golden immortal realm. However, just how high his power was difficult to gauge. Perhaps the growth of a world required time, but Guan wanted to estimate as high as possible because he would regard any powerful existence as a hypothetical enemy. He would not hold enmity towards those with whom he had no grievances, but he needed the confidence to respond. The celestial spirit god was scheming with the celestial Tao golden core, but what was being calculated by the heaven and earth Tao fruit that could devour all living beings? Suddenly, Guan felt that the celestial spirit great world, so clear and transparent in his eyes, became interesting and full of suspense. He was curious to see what storms the celestial Tao golden core and the heaven and earth Tao fruit would stir up in the years to come. Since he had decided to watch over the world's changes from within the dojo, he would not make a move lightly. Guan opened his eyes, raised his hand, and a book from inside the house flew into his hand. He had left many books in his various residences, occasionally revisiting them for new insights. He gently rocked in the rocking chair, undisturbed by anyone. A figure appeared out of nowhere in the courtyard, none other than Zhu Xinglan, the leading disciple of heaven-defining peak. With his cultivation of the 9th floor of the wandering immortal realm, he saw his master's chair swaying and took another look, then began to tend to the courtyard. He did not realize that his master was sitting in the chair. Guan did not leave either, he was simply concealed by the huge gap in their realms, allowing him to remain completely invisible to Zhu Xinglan and undetected in any way. To those of human world peak, they did not know Guan by name, only Meng Lang. As a great cultivator, being away for thousands or even tens of thousands of years was nothing out of the ordinary, so no one wondered about Gu An's disappearance. After spending half a day on human world peak, Guan stepped back into the Taoist field of the beginningless. Taitsung continent, upon a barren plain. Long Qing was meditating in the air, surrounded by black qi which violently tugged at his robes. Candle Star stood on the ground, staring at him and nodding slightly, his eyes full of admiration. At that moment, Long Qing opened his eyes, looking into the distance and furrowing his brow as he asked, "What sword is this exactly?" "It's quite formidable." Candle Star turned to follow his gaze, looking toward the horizon, and said, "The 9 extreme sacred heart sword from Great Hong Sword Heaven, the first demonic sword of their sect, formed from the entire cultivation of a certain sword venerable. His soul was forged into a sword soul, which was then placed within the sacred heart sword Tao in the river of sword Tao, nurtured for countless years to take today's form. To possess this sword is to gain the power to roam the worlds unopposed." Hearing this, Long Qing in surprise asked, "A demonic sword?" "Correct, to tame this sword, one must gain the recognition of its sword soul, but the sword soul is violent and often devours the souls of its masters, so naturally, it is considered a demonic sword," Candle Star said, a hint of playfulness on his face. Narrowing his eyes, Long Qing asked, "Could it be that Great Hong Sword Heaven wants to treat the living beings of the celestial spirit great world as nourishment to feed this demonic sword?" "That's not it," Guan guessed. "It might be related to the founding ancestor of Great Hong Sword Heaven, the Sword God." "Sword God?" Along with the roar, Candle Star recounted the feats of Sword God Yang Pingan, and also mentioned Sword Tao Saint Ancestor Yang Xian. Long Qing listened with rapt attention, never having imagined that such formidable figures existed in other great heaven and earths. After a brief pause, Candle Star said, "The transcender who guards this great thousand world once declared that Sword Tao Saint Ancestor possessed the highest level of comprehension in this great thousand world and could even be considered an anomaly." Long Qing asked with curiosity, Where is that sword Dao's saint ancestor now? I don't know, Candle Star admitted. Some say he has perished, while others believe he is hidden deep within the river of Sword Dao. Because the Sacred Heart Sword Dao has merged with the river of Sword Dao, other sword cultivators from the Great Thousand Worlds can also comprehend the Sacred Heart Sword Dao. Countless sword cultivators and Sword Dao sects now look up to the Sword Dao Saint Ancestor. I too have sensed the Sacred Heart Sword Dao, and truly, it's boundlessly vast. Candle Star shook his head as he spoke, his tone filled with longing for the Sword Dao Saint Ancestor. Long Qing too began to fantasize about the Sacred Heart Sword Dao. Candle Star suddenly exclaimed with suspicion, interrupting Long Qing's thoughts. Long Qing couldn't help but turn to him and asked, "What's wrong?" Candle Star narrowed his eyes and said, "The 9 Extreme Sacred Heart Sword is about to have a master. I never expected him to come. What exactly are these old creatures seeking after reincarnating?" Long Qing was even more confused, but no matter how he inquired afterward, Candle Star refused to reveal more, merely saying that he would know in time. Although he didn't get an answer, Long Qing felt fired up. From what had heard from Candle Star, he learned about a vaster heaven and earth and became aware of more awe-inspiring legends and great powers. He too wanted to become an existence like them. He suddenly thought of his master. What exactly was his master's name? Supporting Dao Sword Venerable was just a title given by the Supreme Sect. His master surely had his own Dao name. Mountains stretched endlessly, and within the forests on the ridges, Leah followed an elder. The divine exotic immortal spirit on his shoulder intently watched the elder, as though fearing that the elder would stop. The elder wore white clothes under a black robe, a bright red belt wrapped around his clothing. His white hair was tied under a jade crown, and even with an aged face, he still had a noble aura. On the elder's back was a sword case with a piece of talisman paper attached, its blood-red characters faintly glowing with a cold light. The elder suddenly stopped walking, startling Leah into halting as well. "You wouldn't think of snatching the sword from me with your Nirvana realm cultivation level, would you?" the elder asked Leah without turning around. Leah took a deep breath and said, "Of course not, but having witnessed your power, I wish to take you as my master to cultivate the most powerful sword Dao." His eyes burned with fervor. The astonishing great battle he had witnessed still echoed in his mind. The image of the elder suppressing the crowd with a single sword strike made a profound impression on him. He had heard from a senior observer that among the great cultivators vying for the divine sword was a powerful being who stood at the 9th heaven of the immortal path. But when he learned such a formidable figure had taken action, he completely abandoned the thought of seizing the sword, adopting more of a spectator's mentality instead. However, the great power of the 9th heaven that he intended to observe ended up defeated, and the defeat was an utter disaster. After the elder left with the divine sword, Leah could still feel the divine sword's guidance, and so he followed. How could the elder not notice his pursuit? When Leah actually managed to keep up, he started to feel hopeful, thinking that perhaps the other party wanted to give him a chance. The elder turned to face Leah and said, "To take me as your master is not impossible. The karma on you is complex, as if someone has altered your fate. Precisely because of that, you should have better comprehension towards the Tao of karma and destiny. I might even pass on this 9 Extreme Sacred Heart Sword to you." "But," Leah immediately asked, "but what?" Hearing that he could possess the sword, his breathing quickened. Chapter 509, Sword Annihilation Ancestor, Imperial Authority Mythology. However, to inherit my Taoist lineage and bear my karma means you will obtain unparalleled power, but you will have difficulty finding peace for the rest of your life. The old man stared at Leah, speaking slowly and deliberately, his gaze icy cold. Leah was frightened by his eyes. He didn't answer right away but instead carefully reflected on his life. Although he had faced hardships, he always felt that his current status was entirely due to the aid of others. In the first half of his life, his imperial father had shielded and protected him. Later, Guan, under another identity, had protected him and taught him swordsmanship. When would he be able to repay these people? Leah found himself caught in a difficult decision. He feared that he would mess things up and that, in the end, Guan would have to rescue him. He couldn't help but turn his head to look at the divine exotic immortal spirit resting on his shoulder. This time, the divine exotic immortal spirit remained silent, merely looking at him steadily, as if to say, "This time it's up to you to decide." Leah believed that the old man had no intention of deceiving him, for there was no need. The gulf between their cultivation levels was vast, and if the old man truly wished to force him to do something, he would have no power to resist. As Leah hesitated, the old man turned and walked away. Leah fell to his knees and kowtowed in the direction of the old man's retreating figure, shouting loudly, "Master above, please accept your disciple's bow." The old man stopped in his tracks and then slowly turned around. He looked at Leah with an expressionless face and said, "Remember, my Taoist name is Sword Annihilation. Many refer to me as the Sword Annihilation Ancestor." Having said this, the Sword Annihilation Ancestor continued to walk away, and Leah quickly got up and followed his pace. Excitement was unmistakable on Leah's face. He stared at the back of the Sword Annihilation Ancestor, with many questions he wanted to ask, but he restrained himself. There is plenty of time ahead. Having seen the Sword Annihilation Ancestor's actions, he felt that the Sword Annihilation Ancestor was a rare existence that could match up to Guan. Of course, it was only his feeling because he thought the Sword Annihilation Ancestor didn't use his full strength when he claimed the 9 extreme Sacred Heart Sword with such an ease and calmness. Such demeanor reminded him of Guan when he transformed into the supporting Tao Sword Venerable. Little did he know, Guan was listening in on his thoughts secretly. Comparing me to the Taoist Zhang Zizai Immortal? Guan, who was picking medicinal herbs in the Taoist field of the beginningless, laughed. But this Sword Annihilation Ancestor had quite a reputation. He must have an even stronger true form. Guan had encountered his true form before, back when he had broken through to become the profound Yuan-free immortal. At that time, the skull that devoured the free immortal had made a lasting impression on Guan. The aura of that skull was identical to that of the Sword Annihilation Ancestor, and from the perspective of karma, they originated from the same source. The mere fact that a clone possessed the cultivation level of a Taoist Zhang Zizai immortal made him wonder just how powerful the Sword Annihilation Ancestor's true form was. Ever since Guan defeated the battle court, the celestial spirit great world seemed to be distancing itself from the catastrophe of outer heaven. In reality, more beings of the Tao fruit realm had infiltrated the celestial spirit great world, behaving more covertly, probably out of fear of Guan. Every choice has its pros and cons. His own lifespan reincarnation had left behind unfavorable karma, but within the life he could control, he had always done good deeds. He was satisfied with that and never tired of it. Guan's mood became increasingly cheerful, and he began to give pointers to the ghost mother of ephemera following him. Although the ghost mother of ephemera had lost her freedom, she did not slack off because she saw greater hope. She even felt that her current life was better and more meaningful than before. Pursuing longevity, that was far more meaningful than being a vice sect hierarch. The ghost mother of ephemera made note of every word Guan said and pondered them deeply. Guan knew what she was thinking, but he never spelled it out. He let her muse wildly, thinking maybe she might stumble upon something significant. An hour later, Guan finished picking herbs, and then he had the ghost mother of ephemera sow the seeds while he walked to his own loft, ready to take a nap. Even innate golden immortals can sleep, and Guan occasionally enjoyed dreaming, finding enlightenment in his dreams a particularly interesting experience. The white clouds above drifted slowly, yet in the blink of an eye, one might feel they moved quickly. The passage of time in the human world is the same. 1,000 years, like those clouds, is both fast and slow. It seems quick to cultivators but slow to mortals. On an early summer day, at high noon. In the Tai-Tsung dynasty, within the Tsungzhou imperial city. In the imperial study, Li Xiandao held a petition, his face expressionless. He had been the emperor for over 4,000 years. His long-standing and domineering rule had become mythologized in the hearts of the people. The commoners were unfamiliar with the name supporting Tao's Sword Venerable, unaware of the great cultivators of the immortal cultivation realm. In their eyes, he was a living immortal. At this moment, 2 people were kneeling in the room, their heads bowed and bodies tense, one of them sweating profusely on the forehead. After a while, Li Xiandao looked up. He glanced at the two kneeling before him and asked, "What is the Crown Prince's opinion on the Yang family's actions?" One of the elderly ministers raised his head to look at Li Xiandao, hesitated for a moment, and said, "His Highness did not respond to us, but one of my spies told me that the Crown Prince once said he found the position of Crown Prince rather dull, and he did not know what? He did not know what it tastes like to sit on the imperial throne." After speaking, the old minister quickly bowed his head, pressing his forehead against the ground. Li Xuando's eyes flashed with a chill upon hearing this. He closed the petition he was holding and set it down gently. "Leave," Li Xiandao said with closed eyes. The two ministers immediately stood up, performed a salutary bow, and left quickly. Once they had left the imperial garden and the palace grounds, and only when they had passed through the gates of the imperial city, did they finally breathe a sigh of relief. The other middle-aged minister turned to the old one and asked in a low voice, "Does His Highness truly intend to?" He looked around and withheld the word rebel. There have been signs for hundreds of years. It is said that ever since the Crown Prince returned from the Holy Land, his temperament has changed. He has already stepped into the immortal realm. I fear the imperial dynasty is about to face unprecedented turmoil. The Yang family has courted no small number of factions, the old minister sighed. His ancestors had served Li Xiandao for 10 generations and he himself had been an academically honored champion designated by Li Xiandao. In his heart, Li Xiandao was the heavens. But faced with a crown prince who possessed the cultivation level of the immortal Tao and had a formidable family background, how could he not think that the throne was on the cusp of changing hands? The middle-aged minister fell silent after hearing this, and they both hastened down the same street. Meanwhile, back in the imperial study, Li Xiandao slowly opened his eyes, gazing straight ahead, and suddenly said, "Guan, supporting Dao's sword venerable, you should be able to hear my words, right?" After his words, silence filled the room, no response came from outside. He took a deep breath, stood up, walked around the desk, and then, lifting the hem of his robe, knelt on the ground. "Guan, if there is still any affection between us, please help me," Li Xiandao said with a resolute expression. He then began to kowtow. However, just as his forehead was about to touch the ground, a hand caught his forehead, preventing it from touching the floor. Li Xuando's pupils contracted and his body trembled slightly. With great caution, he slowly lifted his head to see the person in front of him. It was indeed Guan. Chapter 5:10 The number 1 genius Guan looked at Li Xiandao, who knelt before him, and felt quite moved. At the beginning of his cultivation, Li Xiandao had given him a lot of support. Although at that time, Guan had already been able to fend for himself, Li Xiandao treated him as a junior without knowing his true cultivation level. Throughout their interactions, Li Xiandao had never bullied him and was always so kind to him. The end of the world valley provided by Li Xiandao was also an important part of Guan's income in the first half of his life. The valley had been planted with high-tier cultivation herbs from the start, which were extremely significant for Guan before he reached 100 years old. Additionally, Li Xiandao had treated Yi Yan, Yang Jian, and Wu Xin quite well, so Guan had always had a good impression of Li Xiandao. He felt that there was a bond of sentiment between him and Li Xiandao. Their conversations were always delightful. It's just that Li Xiandao, as the emperor, was too busy, and they seldom met. The last time they had met was more than 2,000 years ago. Li Xiandao had already achieved nirvana, but he displayed a cultivation level of integration realm. He had his own network of connections, but compared to the Yang family behind Li Lingtian and his mother, the forces he had gathered were not as strong. "Rise," Guan said softly, looking at the stunned Li Xiandao, and then he lifted him up. After Li Xiandao stood up, he took a deep breath and said, "You really didn't leave." Guan smiled and responded, "It seems we truly are people of the same path. You know what I'm thinking." Hearing this, Li Xiandao knew that Guan had seen through his hidden cultivation. He wasn't too surprised, considering how high Guan's cultivation level was. "Let's sit down and talk." Guan gestured with his hand, and Li Xiandao nodded, then turned and walked to the table. Once they were both seated, Li Xiandao looked across at Guan, who seemed like an immortal monarch in the flesh, and felt somewhat dazzled. A mix of emotions flooded him. He was surprised, relieved, and felt undeservingly favored. He hadn't expected that he could actually summon Guan. Guan had abandoned the supreme sect but not him. How could he not be moved? "Tell me, how can I help you?" Guan asked. Even though he could guess the answer, he wanted to hear it from Li Xiandao himself. This process would also help Li Xiandao ease his emotions. Li Xiandao took a deep breath and began to recount his predicament. As Li Lingtian grew older, he became restless with his position as crown prince, and the young family behind the empress became increasingly impatient, constantly inciting conflict. A talent had emerged from the young family and had been taken into the holy court at the human world peak, a place far more formidable than all sects within the Broken Sea domain. Li Zuando's hidden cultivation level was nothing compared to the human world peak. It wasn't Li Lingtian that Li Xiandao feared but the human world peak. Guan listened patiently. After Li Xiandao finished speaking, he remarked that kid Li Lingtian has never been a quiet one since he was young, but that's normal. Being born into the imperial dynasty, how could he not aspire for imperial power? Li Zuando's face turned slightly awkward as he admitted, "Indeed, I can't blame him. But the struggle for imperial power relies on one's own means. At least under my rule, the Taizong dynasty has always been developing well." That was indeed true. The Taizong dynasty had enjoyed thousands of years of peace, and while a prosperous age could harbor many internal conflicts, Li Xiandao always managed to resolve them well. Guan didn't feel that Li Xiandao should give up his throne. As long as the people of the Taizong dynasty were doing well and Li Zuando's lifespan was long, he indeed could keep sitting on his throne. Li Xiandao looked at Guan, his heart uneasy. In his eyes, the human world peak posed no threat to Guan, yet there really was no need for Guan to help him against the human world peak. Even if Li Xiandao offered everything he had, it probably wouldn't catch Guan's interest. Guan then spoke, "How about this? I'll have Yang Jian come and help you, and from now on, serve you. How does that sound?" He arranged this because Yang Jian recently wanted to leave the holy court and, conveniently, Yang Jian was the first person to defeat Li Lingtian, so their fated rivalry could be prolonged. Even to this day, Li Lingtian was still using Yang Jian as a benchmark. Upon hearing this, Li Zuando's eyes brightened, and he asked, "Really? Can it be done?" He was very fond of Yang Jian. From the first sight of him, he wanted to win him over. That's why he had previously gathered the imperial dynasty's resources to forge an appropriate divine weapon for Yang Jian. "Of course, he'll arrive in a few days," Guan said with a smile. He believed Li Xiandao could go even further. No matter how the future evolved, for all beings, a situation with many strong contenders was better. If the whole world were to be ruled by a single power, it would be prone to troubles. Just like before, when the Holy Court ruled the world, demon cultivators could slaughter the people of an entire region, and the truth could be easily suppressed by the Saint King. Therefore, with such thoughts in mind, Guan also hoped that the Taizong dynasty could endure and prosper further. Of course, he would only facilitate and mediate, never intervene directly. In fact, Yang Jian had a good impression of Li Xiandao, and it could be beneficial for both if they teamed up. Li Xiandao, after hearing Guan's promise, felt extremely cheerful, as if all the frustrations in his heart had been swept away. He already knew that Yang Jian had regained his Saint King status, and the current Yang Jian could help him counter the human world peak, or at least, human world peak would give face to Yang Jian. "How have these years been for you?" Guan continued, beginning to make small talk with Li Xiandao. Li Xiandao did not hide anything, sincerely sharing his experiences, and the two seemed to return to the times of 4,000 years ago in the end of the World Valley, chatting with great joy. A full hour had passed before Guan finally took his leave. Watching Guan come and go like the wind, leaving not the slightest trace of his presence, Li Xiandao sincerely sighed, "He is a true immortal." No sooner had his words fallen than Guan had already arrived at human world peak. Guan summoned Zhu Xinglan, instructing him to settle the matter, forbidding anyone from intervening in the internal strife of the Taitsung dynasty. Zhu Xinglan immediately set out to handle the task. Without needing to use his status as the supporting Dao Sword Venerable, Guan could still easily have the matter resolved. The Yang family was considered powerful in the Broken Sea domain, but within Human World Peak, they couldn't reach the top echelon. Having given his instructions, Guan then rested in the courtyard. After a while, Zhu Xinglan came back, delighted to see his master had returned. Guan was very satisfied with his dedication over the years and imparted divine skills to him, making Zhu Xinglan even more overjoyed. In the Taitsung dynasty, within a mansion, Li Lingtian sat at the head of the room, his face full of impatience. There were over a dozen people standing in the hall, discussing how to instigate a coup, even arguing over it. Li Lingtian was truly fed up and couldn't help but say, "Enough, no matter what, he is still my father, the emperor. At most, he'll seize power, but it's impossible to harm him." As soon as these words came out, everyone fell silent and then looked towards him. Li Lingtian was incredibly talented and presently had the cultivation level of the immortal Dao realm. His presence was strong enough to command attention. "Do you not realize what imperial power means to your father, the emperor? A struggle for the throne cannot be without casualties." An imposing voice came from outside the hall as a man in white walked in with the sunlight behind him. People turned their heads to look, all showing expressions of joyful surprise. An elder, thrilled, said, "Yang'an, you've finally returned." Yang'an, the top talent of the Yang family and a disciple of Human World Peak. He was handsome and elegant, with an extraordinary demeanor. His mere entrance was enough to dissipate Li Lingtian's aura. Li Lingtian frowned slightly as he looked at Yang'an. He resented and was wary of Yang'an. Everyone made way as Yang'an approached Li Lingtian, slightly raising his chin, looking down upon him, and said, "The Yang family wants to make you emperor, this is your honor. You shouldn't be indecisive." Li Xiandao, when he took the throne, had stained his hands with the blood of many of his brothers and sisters. Chapter 5:11 You are not worthy of the name, and Yang An's words won the approval of the other people in the hall. They spoke in turn, continuing to persuade Li Lingtian, hoping he could let go of a woman's kindness. He must be ruthless in his actions, or else it would be easy to run into trouble. The more they agreed, the more irked Li Lingtian became. A bunch of Yang's surnamed people forcing him, of the Li surname, to kill someone with the same surname? He wanted to curse loudly, but he was no longer the impulsive youth he once was. He had to maintain his relationship with the Yang family. The Yang family had provided him with too many cultivation resources, too many for him to cut ties with. The reason he wanted to become emperor was precisely because he could not gather the force of the Taitsung dynasty for his own gains. No matter how high his talent might be, he still needed heavenly materials and earthly treasures and opportunities to push his cultivation faster. There were as many geniuses in this world as there were innumerable stars. He was not the brightest among them. Li Lingtian's complexion grew increasingly unsightly, and Yang'an did not stop the others from admonishing him. Instead, he watched Li Lingtian with great interest. His reason for coming was not merely to support Li Lingtian. In the eyes of the Yang family, their seizing the throne was already a done deal. What they needed to do was suppress Li Lingtian and make the imperial authority a plaything in the hands of the Yang family. When did the Yang family become the masters of the Taitsung dynasty? How is it that I, who am also surnamed Yang, do not know this? A resounding voice echoed through heaven and earth, reaching the ears of everyone in the hall. Before they could react, a figure, glittering with silver light, appeared out of nowhere beside Yang, and Yang glanced over and his pupils suddenly dilated. The blade's edge was at his throat, making his body feel like it was in a cold cellar, chilled to the bone. Standing beside Yang was a man clad in silver armor, his left hand gripping a three-pointed double-bladed saber, its blade horizontal in front of him, pressed against Yang An's throat. His posture was so casual that it brought an indescribable shock to everyone present. Li Lingtian stared at Yang Jian, his eyes widening and his mouth opening involuntarily. "It's you." Li Lingtian could never forget Yang Jian. The two had spent many years together, and he had often sparred with Yang Jian. never winning once. How many years had it been? He had fantasized about the scene of meeting with Yang Jian again, but he had never imagined it would be under these circumstances. After a brief silence, a female cultivator of the Yang family couldn't help but ask, "Who are you?" The others hastily took out their magic artifacts. Even though they were frightened by the Yang family, they had no intention to run because this was the Yang family's ground, and their descendants were outside. They could not flee. Yang En looked at Yang Jian, sweating profusely. He was locked in by Yang Jian's intent to kill, his mana frozen, unable to mobilize it. He couldn't see through Yang Jian's cultivation level at all. But one thing was certain, he was no match for this person. Yang Jian glanced at Yang En and said, "Given your connections with Li Lingtian, put away your delusions." His gaze then shifted to Li Lingtian, his eyes indifferent. "Kid, nobody can touch your father's imperial seat, including you. Don't forget the ambitions you told me about. How did you end up so vulgar?" On hearing this, Li Lingtian's face turned red, but he had no rebuttal. Because he once told Yang Jian that he wanted to become the #1 cultivator in the world, he wanted to pursue longevity and immortality, not to be some prince or crown prince. However, as his realm grew higher, he felt increasing resistance, and he couldn't help but ponder worldly possessions. "Who are you really?" "The person you are holding is from the human world peak. You had better weigh your options," another middle-aged cultivator said through gritted teeth. Yang Jian glanced at him, his eyes so cold that it terrified the man, who instinctively stepped back. The human world peak is formidable, and their peak master, the Taoist monarch of eternal years, is indeed a great power. I have discussed the Tao with him. "Oh, that's right, I am Yang Jian, the Candle World Saint King from the Holy Court. Have any of you heard of me?" Yang Jian's words made everyone's complexion change dramatically. The Saint King of the Holy Court. The cultivators of the Yang family were so frightened that they knelt down, foreheads to the ground, begging for Yang Jian's forgiveness. Li Lingtian sat stunned in his chair. Although he was puzzled as to why Yang Jian had become a saint king, he was very clear about one thing: in front of the Holy Court, the human world peak was nothing. Yang Jian's gaze moved back to Yang En, making Yang An's Tao heart tremble. "You are not worthy of the name En. From today on, change your name," Yang Jian said with an unquestionable tone. Yang An's throat bobbed as he involuntarily uttered a word, "Okay." Seeing Yang Jian easily suppress the Yang family, Li Lingtian's mouth opened slightly, a sense of overwhelming defeat welling up inside him. The gap between him and Yang Jian was getting bigger and bigger. The seasons of the human world cycled, and early autumn had arrived once again. In the woods outside the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan lay on a tree branch, dappled sunlight speckling his face as he examined his attribute panel. Name, Guan. Lifespan, 4,458/50,802,675,392, Physique, Primordial Infinite Body, Cultivation Level, Innate Golden Immortal Realm Perfection, 50 billion years of lifespan. He had reached halfway to 100 billion. This was the accumulation Guan had achieved without massive slaughter or causing any upheaval, yet his lifespan had grown rapidly. Given such an advantage, he naturally did not have to struggle and risk his life like the common folks in the mortal coil. Because of this, he had to be more careful and cautious, never arrogant. Beneath the tree, Celestial Cyan and Tian Bai were practicing their swordsmanship, a dual-blade harmony technique created by Guan for them. The two women were vigorously immersed in their practice, while the celestial demon child was in the midst of a deep, extended cultivation retreat. "It's been a while since I've initiated a lifespan reincarnation. Should I give it a go?" Suddenly feeling an urge, Guan felt that his understanding of the Great Tao had slowed down recently, and he needed a new stimulus. Lifespan reincarnation was the perfect way. Even with its risks, they wouldn't immediately affect him in reality. A gamble. It had been many years since the last one. It was time. With a thought, Guan immediately initiated the lifespan reincarnation. You have expended 10 million years of lifespan to commence a session of reincarnation evolution, starting to connect to Tao rules, searching for reincarnation worlds. You have the following worlds to choose from. Select 1, 1. Celestial Spirit Great World. 2. Great World of the Heavenly Tome. 3. Dark Great World. Great World? Heavenly Tome? Guan was drawn to the second option, but why did he feel like this world existed within the pages of a book? If so, he might encounter terrifying beings akin to the celestial spirit god. Forget it, better not meddle with the great worlds for now. 10 million years was not a small number to him. He'd have to work hard for half a year to attain it. Guan's gaze settled on the dark great world. Ever since Yang Xian defeated the Black Profound Emperor, Guan was no longer so cautious of him. This time, he could attempt to confront the Black Profound Emperor again, to personally vanquish him. Having made his choice, a series of prompts appeared before his eyes. You have chosen to reincarnate into the dark great world. Considering the Tao rules of this world cannot conceal your talent, you will retain the ability to seize lifespan but cannot activate stage-specific functions. Reincarnation evolution begins. In the first year, you are born in a town within the Western Extreme Domain. As a newborn, the town faces a demon beast attack, your parents are killed, and you are carried away by a demon beast, only to be fortuitously rescued by a cultivator. You are named by the cultivator as Black Profound. Chapter 5:12, Black Profound Ascension. Profound Clear Immortal Sect. Black Profound? Guan couldn't help but frown when he saw the first hint. Could Black Profound Emperor be his reincarnation body? He thought back carefully about the encounter Yang Xian had with Black Profound Emperor, who never revealed his true face, making it hard to judge. But if Black Profound Emperor was him, why would he want to kill his own reincarnation body? Guan continued to read, developing a strong curiosity about this lifetime. At 2 years old, you were taken back to the Celestial Dark Demon sect by a cultivator, and the cultivator Luo Abyss officially took you as his disciple. At 4 years old, Luo Abyss began to teach you the cultivation technique, and you displayed extraordinary talent that shocked Luo Abyss. At 5 years old, Luo Abyss left, leaving you alone in his cave mansion. A python he was keeping broke out of its cage, wanting to eat you. After a fierce battle, you killed the python and accidentally gained 30 years of lifespan, marking a turning point in your destiny. At 6 years old, you built your foundation establishment successfully with the demon core of the python. At 7 years old, Luo Abyss returned. Knowing that you had killed the python, he didn't say anything but handed you a secret manual. You took the manual and saw 5 words written on the cover, Yin-Yang Reversal Skill. The following were years of cultivation. Black Profound showed strong talent, but whether he was the strongest among the reincarnation bodies was still hard to tell. Until the age of 20, Black Profound was sent down the mountain by Luo Abyss to gain experience for a century. At 21 years old, you met an elderly Taoist. He noticed your extraordinary demeanor and wanted to tell your fortune. Do you accept? Why does every reincarnation involve such encounters? Could there be a scheme? Guan didn't believe in coincidences, and he chose to refuse. You refused for the Taoist to tell your fortune. The Taoist shook his head with regret, saying that you would meet again one day. You watched his retreating back and remained silent for a long time. At 22 years old, you encountered a demon race attacking the city. Without hesitating, you joined the battle along with a group of cultivators and successfully repelled the demon race. Because of your heavy killing aura, the city's civilians kept their distance from you, and even other cultivators were wary of you. Unable to integrate, you silently left. At 23 years old, you encountered a demon cultivator committing evil acts. You eliminated the demon cultivator. The grateful mortal family from the city invited you to stay at their mansion for a few days. You agreed, and during the journey thereafter, you protected the family while defeating demons along the way. This caused the family to fear you even more. On the night before reaching the destination, you overheard them discussing how to send you away, and you left alone before dawn. At 24 years old, you came to Hanji City and heard that the city was hosting a magic battle conference. Only young talents under the age of 100 could enroll, and you decided to sign up. In the end, you defeated all the competitors, claiming first place powerfully and becoming famous citywide. At the celebration banquet, the city lord wanted to betroth his daughter to you. Do you accept? No. Although Black Profound might be the Black Profound Emperor, now it's Guan's reincarnation body, and he can't allow his reincarnation body to have any weaknesses. Finding a Tao companion is alright, but not now. You refused the City Lord's goodwill, and he shook his head, chuckled, and did not persist. The very next day, you took the heavenly materials and earthly treasures you had won at the Magic Battle Conference and left. When you were about 100 miles from Hanji City, you encountered a group of mysterious cultivators who ambushed you. After a fierce battle, only one of them was left alive. Through coercion, you learned that it was the City Lord's arrangement, which infuriated you. At the age of 25, you entered the demon race's forest and began slaughtering demons extensively. At the age of 26, you returned to Hanji City and made your way to the City Lord's mansion where you chose to force your way in. A great battle erupted, and in the end, you left the City Lord's mansion full of corpses. The exhausted City Lord knelt on the ground, begging for your forgiveness. His daughter also ran over, standing in front of you, hoping you would spare her father. Will you choose to forgive the City Lord? Forgive what? Did the City Lord ever forgive me? Guan, identifying with the role of Black Profound, also felt angered and immediately chose no. You ignored the pleas of the City Lord's daughter and beheaded the City Lord with a single sword strike. Then, you turned and left. Under the gloomy sky, the City Lord's daughter knelt on the ground, cursing you hoarsely and vowing to seek revenge in the future. You were indifferent and walked away proudly. Guan, seeing this, felt that Black Profound might have developed feelings for the girl. Through this journey, how intense Black Profound's killing intent had been, almost catching up to Long Zhan. Could he actually have spared the City Lord's daughter? The image of Black Profound in Guan's mind became even more nuanced, and as for the consequences of sparing the City Lord's daughter, Guan was not worried. With the life-controlling Black Profound Emperor evolving rapidly, his early lives' enemies would hardly impact his future. In the subsequent prompts, Black Profound clearly relied heavily on life evolution, killing relentlessly each year, even routinely slaughtering the alien race, making Guan feel his growth rate would exceed his past lives. After a century, Black Profound returned to the Celestial Dark Demon sect. At the age of 121, you returned to Luo Abyss Cave Mansion and unexpectedly learned of Luo Abyss' death, the cause being demonic possession that led him to harm his fellow sect members, and he was slain by a great cultivator from within the sect in time. You found the incident highly suspicious. While staying at the Celestial Dark Demon sect to cultivate, you began investigating the truth behind your master's death. At the age of 122, you stumbled upon another disciple of Luo Abyss within the sect. After a discussion, you opened your heart, believing that your master could not have been possessed demonically. After hesitating, the other disciple suggested that the cause of the master's death might have been offending the vice sect hierarch, giving you a direction for your investigation. At the age of 123, while you were cultivating in the cave mansion, you felt strong auras approaching. Before you could think further, the restriction of the cave mansion was broken, and a group of law enforcement disciples forcibly entered, accusing you of demonic possession and harming your fellow sect members. They attempted to execute you on the spot. After a fierce battle, you escaped but were met with more opponents. You kept killing as you fled, leaving the Celestial Dark Demon sect and heading north. At the age of 124, you arrived in the land of the North Nether. Standing on a cliff, you were awestruck by the sight of Kun leaping from the boundless ocean, which led you into a state of profound mystery and enlightenment. At the age of 125, deep in the glacier, you discovered a mysterious cave mansion. After days of research, you successfully deciphered the clues of the restrictions left on the cave mansion. You stepped inside and, after facing 9 mechanisms, saw a stele inscribed with the words cause and effect. Feeling the dense spiritual energy within the cave mansion, you decided to go into seclusion there, planning to seek revenge on the Celestial Dark Demon sect later. At the age of 135, you entered the Mahayana realm, prepared to return to the Celestial Dark Demon sect. Just as you were about to leave, the cause and effect stele vibrated, and a powerful force absorbed you into it. You found yourself in a dimly lit cave. Turning around, you saw that the steel behind you was different from the previous cause and effect steel. It had no inscriptions and was covered in cracks and dust. No matter how you applied your powers, the steel remained inert. You chose to walk out of the cave. Outside the cave wasn't the glacier anymore, but a world resembling the immortal realm, filled with abundant spiritual energy that astounded you. Just as you were immersed in the magnificent scenes of nature, a white-robed woman resembling a fairy descended from the sky and landed beside you. You couldn't discern her cultivation level, so you were very vigilant. The white-robed woman asked if you had ascended from the lower realm, which puzzled you further. She invited you to join the profound clear immortal sect. Will you agree? Ascended? Guan had never heard of the profound clear immortal sect, but it seemed Black Profound had no other choice. If the other party harbored ill intentions, even if he refused, he would still face trouble. Why not join and see? Chapter 5:13 Celestial Court. God of Destruction. Guan chose to join the profound clear immortal sect, hoping that Black Profound could follow the right path within the profound clear immortal sect. Excessive killing was not a good practice. You chose to join the profound clear immortal sect, and the lady in white was pleased. She then introduced you to the profound clear immortal sect, and during the conversation, you learned her name, Fairy by Xian. Under Fairy by Xian's guidance, you successfully joined the profound clear immortal sect and officially entered the profound pure great world. Profound pure great world? Guan pondered. He knew that the Great Thousand World was considered a whole universe, and the celestial spirit Great World had been part of the Great Thousand World before it shattered. Not all Great Thousand Worlds were as fragmented as the celestial spirit Great World. How strong a complete Great Thousand World was, even Guan could not judge now, for he had not witnessed it. Alerts kept popping up in front of him as Fairy by Xian introduced Black Profound to her mentor, making Black Profound her junior brother. In the years that followed, Black Profound no longer engaged in battles but practiced cultivation with his master and Fairy by Xian. The more this happened, the more uneasy Guan felt. He had a feeling that something big would happen, something very significant. Black Profound practiced in the profound clear immortal sect, spending hundreds of years as if he had forgotten the vengeance for Luo Abyss. At the age of 178, the profound clear immortal sect welcomed a Millennia Dao conference, with various teachings from all over the world coming to participate. You heard from Fairy by Xian that she admired a man known as Emperor Ziwei, a peerless prodigy. You secretly took note of this name, then inquired about Emperor Ziwei. When the Millennia Dao conference began, you went above the sea of clouds and saw the elegance of Emperor Ziwei among many disciples. This sight made you lose interest in watching the spectacle, and you returned to your cave mansion to continue in seclusion. Then came various cultivation alerts. Guan couldn't help but wonder what kind of elegance Emperor Ziwei possessed, one glance at whom had deeply affected Black Profound. Emperor Ziwei used Emperor in his name, and Black Profound later became the Black Profound Emperor. Could it be because of him? At the age of 214, Fairy by Xian found you and said she was going out for training, expecting to be gone for at least 100 years. You were worried about her and wanted to follow, but Fairy by Xian told you not to worry. Did you choose to insist on following Fairy by Xian? If it had been before, Guan would definitely have chosen no, to avoid falling into a romantic entanglement with his reincarnation body. But he remembered how young Xian had to bury his wife, and the two had never been together. Perhaps, constantly preventing it might not be a good thing either. And in this life, Black Profound also had a tough time with no family, no friends, and even his master had died. Setting aside his prejudice against the Black Profound Emperor, Guan decided to truly treat Black Profound as himself, treating everyone equally. He chose to insist on following. You chose to insist on following Fairy by Xian. She looked at you, staring until you felt uneasy. Suddenly, she smiled and said you better not hold her back. Hearing this, a smile also appeared on your face. Looking at your senior sister smiling like the bright moon in the sky, you secretly swore to protect her completely for life. At the age of 215, you followed Fairy by Xian to a sea, where you stopped on a deserted island. Fairy Bai Xian was preparing to collect herbs on the island, while you meditated on the beach. Later, Fairy Bai Xian chose to stay on the island, where she began practicing alchemy, and she would let you taste any elixirs she made. At the age of 217, you left the island and ventured further into the sea, where you encountered a human race sea ship surrounded by demon beasts. You chose to help, rarely encountering ownerless demons, unable to resist the urge to kill. Afterwards, Fairy Bai Xian cautioned you not to create too much slaughter. The profound Clear Immortal sect was not just a sect of the human race but also of all living beings without discriminating between races. You promised it wouldn't happen again. Seeing Fairy Bai Xian admonishing Black Profound, Guan felt that his decision was the right one. Lifespan could be considered as an aid and could be used in many ways, as long as one did not develop a killer instinct. He felt that Black Profound would not give up on lifespan, but as long as there was some restraint, it was also a good thing. Black Profound followed Fairy Bai Xian traveling around the world, treasure hunting, saving demons and people, exorcising ghosts, their journey brimming with excitement. The two also encountered dangers and had been seriously injured, but luckily, they took care of each other and always managed to turn peril into safety. Fairy Bai Xian had saved Black Profound, and Black Profound had also saved her. All in all, nobody truly held the other back. At 307 years old, you unexpectedly stumbled upon a battle for treasure where one party was none other than the Emperor Ziwei, whom Fairy Bai Xian admired. He fought alone against hundreds of strong immortal Dao cultivators and ultimately defeated them. Fairy Bai Xian was amazed, and even you had to admit that Emperor Ziwei was truly powerful. After the battle ended, Emperor Ziwei approached you. He obviously recognized Fairy Bai Xian and wished to invite her to his dojo as a guest, but she politely declined. Emperor Ziwei then turned to you and extended the invitation. Would you choose to visit his dojo? No. Not going. Guan made his choice directly. He was somewhat displeased with Emperor Ziwei. Hadn't he seen Black Profound walking with Fairy Bai Xian? Why interfere? You chose to refuse the invitation to Emperor Ziwei's dojo. Emperor Ziwei did not insist and soon left. You turned to Fairy Bai Xian, asking her why she did not go. Fairy Bai Xian looked at him and counter-questioned why they should go. You exchanged smiles, understanding each other without words. At 308 years old, you came to the most magnificent mountain in the land, rumored to house an immortal. Deciding to seek the immortal, you began the ascent but found that you could not use your mana. You had to proceed up the mountain as mere mortals. At 309 years old, after a year's journey, you reached halfway up the mountain and saw a courtyard with an old man resting inside, holding a fan. Surprised, you recognized him as the old Taoist who had wanted to tell your fortune years ago. The Taoist also recognized you, and with a smile, he said it was finally time to meet, which intrigued Fairy Bai Xian. When she learned that you had met in the lower realm, it filled her with respect for the old Taoist. He did not say much more and threw 2 secret manuals onto the ground before returning alone to his house. You picked up the secret manuals from the ground and began to study them. At 320 years old, after 11 years of cultivation, you finally perfected one of the divine skills. The old Taoist finally came out of his house, praising you for having a destiny pattern fit for an emperor's path. However, you had suppressed your nature. This caused the still unskilled Fairy Bai Xian to be confused. Knowing the innate aggressiveness in your bones, Fairy Bai Xian fell silent, and you were also caught in a dilemma, whether to keep your promise not to kill or to follow the old Taoist's advice and embark on the emperor's path. The hint stopped there. Guan did not hesitate, choosing to keep his promise and not kill. Who persuades someone to start killing? That old Taoist is fishy. You chose to keep your promise to Fairy Bai Xian not to kill and not to follow the emperor's path, making Fairy Bai Xian very happy. The old Taoist said you would regret your decision one day. His gaze made you uncomfortable, so you made an excuse, took Fairy Bai Xian's hand, and bid your goodbyes. At 321 years old, you and Fairy Bai Xian discovered the legendary divine beast, the celestial auspicious deer, in the forbidden demon forest. You received the blessing of the celestial auspicious deer, enhancing your comprehension. After surreptitiously being cursed by the old Taoist, Guan was cautious and closely watched the hints, fearing Black Profound and Fairy by Xian might encounter danger. Fortunately, they continued to encounter amazing adventures until they were over 500 years old, when both returned to the profound clear immortal sect and entered into seclusion. The next 500 years passed even quicker. Yet, the event Guan feared still occurred. At 1,347 years old, while in seclusion, you felt a terrifying pressure. You immediately left your cave mansion and saw the sky darken, forming a majestic vortex of clouds, and felt an oppressive atmosphere. Soon after, you saw a pair of eyes and then heard an authoritative voice claiming he was the god of destruction from the celestial court, stating that there were unusual intrusions in this great world that must be cleansed. As his voice fell and the earth shook, you immediately went to find Fairy by Xian. You managed to find her and wanted to take her to flee, but she decided to stand or fall with the profound clear immortal sect. You were caught in an inner struggle, wondering whether to stay and protect the profound clear immortal sect. Celestial Court, God of Destruction. Guan frowned tightly. This god of destruction might be a terrifying being like the celestial spirit god, and it seemed the celestial spirit great world had shattered because of the celestial spirit god. How could the profound clear immortal sect resist such a terrifying entity? But how could Black Profound flee and still face the profound clear immortal sect? Forget it. Might as well die together, consider the million-year lifespan wasted. To embrace death with a loved one, even if life is short, insights can still be obtained. You chose to stay and protect the profound clear immortal sect, which deeply touched Fairy by Xian. She seemed to think of something and pulled you flying to a place. On the way, you saw countless great cultivators from the profound clear immortal sect rushing toward the giant eye in the sky, only to be extinguished one after another. This sequence of events made you feel so insignificant. Following Fairy by Xian's lead, you discovered that you had come to the cave where you had first crossed into the profound pure great world. Fairy by Xian explained that the reason she had recruited you into the immortal sect at first sight was that her deceased father had claimed that this cave held an immortal fate. Someone who had once saved the profound clear immortal sect had emerged from this cave mansion. She hoped you could return to your original world. You said you didn't know how to go back when you saw Fairy by Xian pulling out a jade pendant. You felt something was wrong and tried to snatch the jade pendant, but Fairy by Xian forcibly pushed you into the cave. She then threw the jade pendant after you into the cave. You felt a familiar and long-missed powerful force behind you. Looking back from afar, you saw Fairy by Xian at the cave entrance, her face filled with reluctance as she watched you. Chapter 514, Taoist Emperor, the Unprincipled Immortal. You have returned to the dark great world. Seeing this prompt, Guan's feelings became complex. He had originally thought that Black Profound would die because of Fairy by Xian, but he had not expected that in the end, it was Fairy by Xian who saved Black Profound. Fairy by Xian did not abandon everything for love, nor did she let Black Profound bear her responsibilities. Even Guan was moved by Fairy by Xian and felt that she was worthy of the identity of an immortal sect disciple. Since there was no choice to be made, the prompt continued. Having returned to the dark great world, Black Profound chose the path of extremity, beginning to slaughter demons and slay monsters wildly. In less than a century, he had fought his way back to the celestial dark demon sect. He headed straight for the vice sect hierarch, seeking to avenge his master. Everyone who tried to stop him was executed. In the end, he brought about the collapse of the celestial dark demon sect. No one dared to block his path, with the sect hierarch himself begging for mercy on behalf of the vice sect hierarch, revealing that the vice sect hierarch was his own younger brother. To this, Guan chose not to show mercy, for Black Profound needed to avenge the Luo Abyss for his master. Besides, without the pursuit of the celestial dark demon sect, how could Black Profound have been forced into the profound pure great world? Good and evil will eventually be repaid. The celestial dark demon sect had this tribulation coming. As for Black Profound, he too would face his karma. If there was cause and effect, even death would only mean his skills were inferior. Black Profound grew rapidly, but he never encountered the other two reincarnations of Guan in the dark great world, Chu Lu, and Xiao Xingtian, which made him doubt whether Black Profound was indeed the Black Profound Emperor. Guan sat up from the tree trunk. He was currently in the dojo. Even if inheriting memories of reincarnation drained spiritual energy, it was like the lifespan barrier, drawing spiritual energy from all directions of great heaven and earth, and would not reveal the location of the dojo. In this world today, every day, there were great cultivators breaking through. The commotion was already significant, so the disturbance caused by inheriting memories would not cause panic among all beings. Down below, Celestial Cyan and Tian Bai were still practicing swordsmanship and did not notice Guan sitting up. When the prompt regarding reincarnation reached 2,000 years later, Black Profound finally encountered a catastrophe. At 2,132 years of age, you reached the 9th heaven of the immortal path in cultivation level, alarming the whole world. What was the cultivation level of this evil emperor? You've comprehended the path of cause and effect, you've comprehended the path of destiny, you've comprehended the path of yin and yang. An evil soul tried to possess you, but you eradicated it by forcibly evolving your lifespan. Your cultivation level has greatly increased. You opened your eyes, and the evil emperor was kneeling before you, calling you master and offering you the emperor's weapon, the Karma Rebirth Moon. You pretended to accept, leading the evil emperor away, and began your secluded cultivation. You successfully crossed the tribulation and reached the realm of profound Yuan free immortal. The evil emperor returned to congratulate you. Suddenly, you attacked him. After a fierce battle, you slew the evil emperor and found the emperor's destiny within the palace. You merged it with your own, changing your destiny pattern and becoming a Taoist emperor, unconstrained by karma or fate. You named yourself Black Profound Emperor, and as if decreed by some cosmic fate, you felt recognized. At the age of 2,303, you stepped out of the evil domain and into the cosmos. You discovered the vastness of the universe. The dark great world was just a fraction of it, and you began to traverse the cosmos. Black Profound Emperor. It was indeed him. Seeing this prompt, Guan felt conflicted. He didn't understand why the Black Profound Emperor would want to kill his reincarnation body. The prompts kept coming. More and more slaughter, but the Black Profound Emperor didn't kill without purpose. He was also searching for a way to break free from the universe, seeking to return to the profound pure great world. When the Black Profound Emperor arrived at the world gate, he didn't encounter the celestial spirit god, leading Guan to speculate that the dark great world might not belong to the celestial spirit great world. Eventually, the Black Profound Emperor successfully crossed the universe and arrived at the path of the Great Tao. Along this path were entrances to different great worlds. The Black Profound Emperor could not discern which great world was the profound pure great world. He could only explore them one by one. The first two great worlds were fine. He could come and go as he pleased, but when he approached the third great world, he encountered karma retribution just as he was about to enter. Even the path of destiny seemed to reject him, something he had never felt before, forcing him to retreat. This set Guan's mind racing. To encounter karma retribution, there must surely be some cause and effect involved. Could it be related to the other reincarnation bodies? In the end, the Black Profound Emperor returned to the profound pure great world, now a wasteland. He wandered between heaven and earth, seeing no living spirits, and when he came to the once thriving profound clear immortal sect, he could not find Fairy by Xian anywhere. The Black Profound Emperor lingered at the ruins of the profound clear immortal sect for a long time. He erected a monument for Fairy by Xian, and just as he was about to leave, an overwhelming oppressive force descended upon him, a presence he could never forget. The Celestial Court, the God of Destruction. Reading this, Guan felt that things had gone awry. He didn't think the Black Profound Emperor was a match for the God of Destruction, especially since the Black Profound Emperor was currently only a profound Yuan-free immortal. At the age of 2702, you faced the God of Destruction, prepared to avenge Fairy by Xian. Yet, to your astonishment, you saw a figure appear behind the God of Destruction. It was Fairy by Xian. Her aura was completely different from the one in your memories, cold and detached, making you realize she was a reincarnation of a Celestial Court immortal god. The Celestial Court discovered the anomaly of this great world because of her. Now that she has regained her memories from her past life, her gaze towards you was cold and indifferent. Just when you felt utterly hopeless, the old Taoist who had taught you divine skills appeared and repelled the god of destruction with a single palm strike, then fled with you from the profound pure great world. During the escape, you learned that the anomaly the god of destruction spoke of wasn't you, an ascender, but the old Taoist himself, revealing that his Taoist name was the free immortal who exists without the celestial court's acceptance, barely surviving within the 3,000 great worlds. At the age of 2703, you were taken by the free immortal to the land of reincarnation. He urged you again to walk the path of slaughter. Thinking of Fairy Bai Xian's cold visage, this time you chose to forsake your vow. The free immortal passed on divine skills to you, allowing you to create karma avatars to slay your other reincarnation bodies and break free from the chains of reincarnation. Good heavens! So that's what was happening. This free immortal was really stirring things up. The most crucial point was that Guan had no choice in the matter. It meant that the Black Profound Emperor had not hesitated at all, greatly spurred by the shock from Fairy Bai Xian. Guan felt it was absurd, but the prompts about reincarnation continued, indicating that escaping from the lifespan reincarnation was not so easy. If a reincarnation body could kill the original, then a lifespan of 10 million years could be too much of a loss. At the age of 2820, you created 3,000 karma avatars, dispersing them into the 3,000 great worlds, then manipulating them to enter the river of destiny. A third of your karma avatars were exterminated within the year. At 3,007 years of age, the free immortal passed the cultivation technique to you, the Taoist unique venerate skill. Chapter 515, 9 in Divine Mansion, Terrifying Celestial God. At 3,116 years old, Guan comprehended the Taoist unique venerate skill and perceived the 3,000 great Tao, gaining enlightenment within his heart. In that same year, all the karma avatars he had sent out were annihilated. He did not inform Wudao Immortal of this event. At 3,320 years old, Guan found Wudao Immortal and expressed a desire to engage in slaughter. Wudao Immortal did not let him leave but instead sent him into the boundless purgatory, a place of exile used by the celestial court. Anyone who fell into it could only engage in endless slaughter until they were killed. At 3,321 years old, Guan condensed his own Taoist Emperor divine skills. By the age of 3,350, Guan had leveraged lifespan evolution to forcefully enter the heaven-encompassing free immortal realm. He met Emperor Guanyu, and through Emperor Guanyu, he gained a deeper understanding of the boundless purgatory. At age 3,362, a powerful being was exiled into the purgatory by the celestial court. Guan witnessed this powerful being besieged, killing gods when gods stood in the way and demons when demons blocked the path. Feeling that he was no match, he stayed away from the battlefield. At 3,400 years old, Emperor Guanyu, with that powerful being, found Guan. This person was known as the Emperor Zhenhai, also a heaven-encompassing free immortal. They prepared to go and slaughter the most terrifying existence in the boundless purgatory, the no-prison demon lord. At 3,401 years old, the three of you found the no-prison demon lord. However, you were no match for him. After being repeatedly heavily injured, Wudao Immortal suddenly appeared at the critical moment. Unexpectedly, he was acquainted with the no-prison demon lord. The no-prison demon lord looked at you and forced you to choose between Emperor Guanyu and Emperor Zhenhai, with only one of them being able to survive with you. You fell into a dilemma. It was time for Guan to make a choice, and he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He still had a choice to make, which meant that the reincarnation body was still under the control of the lifespan reincarnation. Choosing between Emperor Guanyu and Emperor Zhenhai was easy. After all, he knew Emperor Guanyu better because of Black Profound. Guan immediately chose Emperor Guanyu. You chose to let Emperor Guanyu live, yet the no-prison demon lord did not slay Emperor Zhenhai but instead took him as a subordinate. You and Emperor Zhenhai exchanged glances, feeling the hostility from the other. Afterwards, Wudao Immortal brought you back from the boundless purgatory to the land of reincarnation. At 3,500 years old, you took advantage of Wudao Immortal's absence and stealthily left his dojo, embarking on your own adventure in the land of reincarnation. At 3,501 years old, you encountered a ghost immortal from the Nine Divine Mansion, sustaining severe injuries and having no choice but to leap into the netherworld. You began your reincarnation. Nine Divine Mansion? A mere ghost immortal could heavily wound the Black Profound Emperor, a heaven-encompassing free immortal? Guan grew even more wary of the land of reincarnation. During his previous breakthroughs in the land of reincarnation, he had always felt an eerie chill, as though something immensely terrifying was hidden in the dark. After reincarnating, it was a new life, but the Black Profound Emperor still retained the ability of lifespan evolution. However, the reincarnation body was distinctly different from Guan. They lacked the various lifespan abilities and could only use lifespan evolution to enhance their cultivation level and Taoist techniques, not like Guan, who controlled life expectancy prediction, lifespan barrier, lifespan simulation, and other abilities. Every time the Black Profound Emperor made a breakthrough, he would suffer attacks, exactly because he lacked the lifespan barrier. In this life, the Black Profound Emperor achieved the Nirvana realm before he turned 1,000 years old. Then, he began to regain his memories and, after sweeping away his enemies in a single lifetime, he stepped out of the path of reincarnation at the age of 2,000 and returned to the land of reincarnation, restoring his cultivation as a heaven-encompassing free immortal. Free from the harassment of the ghost immortal, the Black Profound Emperor continued to advance. In this way, the Black Profound Emperor began his own adventurous life. He no longer dwelled on Fairy by Sien, but he would go to explore the existence of the celestial court. In future hints, he would meet women who moved his heart, but Guan rejected them on his behalf. One profound experience was enough. Guan continually made choices on behalf of the Black Profound Emperor, and each choice reinforced his own confidence. He had indeed been bluffed by Wudao Immortal before, as if the reincarnation body would devour its master. Before he knew it, the Black Profound Emperor reached 1 million years of age. He had been holding off breaking through to the innate golden immortal realm, and Guan felt he must be wary of something. Finally, the Black Profound Emperor began his breakthrough. At 1,008 years old, you started your breakthrough and succeeded in surpassing the free immortal status to achieve the golden immortal Tao fruit. You encountered an attack from Wudao Immortal, who wanted to take possession of your physical body. You employed your divine skills and leaped to another great world, with Wudao Immortal in hot pursuit. You have come to the celestial spirit great world. You realize this great world has already shattered, and so you rush toward the world gate, wanting to flee to a stronger great world, as the godless immortal continuously attacks you. You encounter an attack by the celestial spirit god. You are severed in two by a single axe blow from the celestial spirit god. You immediately resist, but the celestial spirit god swings the axe again and slays you, destroying both body and spirit. You die at the hands of the celestial spirit god. Reincarnation ends. Damn it. The celestial spirit god again. Even the Black Profound Emperor died by his hand? Celestial spirit god, if you could also slay the godless immortal, then I would truly admire you. That's what Guan thought to himself as he got up, disappeared from his spot, and arrived at the highest peak in the Taoist field of the beginningless. He sat cross-legged on a cliff and began to inherit the memories of reincarnation. The reincarnation prompts were just a summary. Only by truly inheriting the memories of reincarnation could one feel them vividly. A continuous stream of reincarnation memories flooded into Guan's mind. Upon awakening in the body of reincarnation in the dark great world, the whole world was enshrouded in darkness. The world was dark, and human hearts, even darker. Although Luo Abyss had saved Black Profound, he hadn't treated him all that well, but because he was Black Profound's only kin, Black Profound could never forget him. No matter how many years passed, Black Profound would always think of that dark cave mansion. Having become Black Profound, Guan could understand these feelings. The more one lacks something, the more they yearn. He did not miss Luo Abyss, he yearned for kinship, that was all. In the dark great world, not a single day was happy for Black Profound. Guan felt that he had it even worse than Chu Lu and Xiao Xingtian. It was only when Guan stepped into the profound pure great world that his entire world seemed to brighten and become radiant thanks to Fairy Bai Xian's smile. At that moment, he was black profound, and he too wanted to protect Fairy Bai Xian for a lifetime. The life that followed, adventuring through the great world with Fairy Bai Xian, was even more carefree and joyous, and also gave Guan a deeper understanding of the power of the great world. In the profound pure great world, the 9 heavens of the immortal path were not a secret to sentient beings, and there were even transcendent beings who surpassed the 9 heavens of the immortal path, active in the world, each an overlord and a great power of the world. When the god of destruction appeared, the beauty finally shattered. Guan stood in front of his cave mansion, looking up at the visage of the god of destruction, truly a sight of awe-inspiring power. Even the skies of the great thousand world could not contain the god of destruction. How powerful the profound clear immortal sect was, yet those who surpassed the 9 heavens of the immortal path fell one after another in their assaults on the god of destruction, as futile as mantises trying to stop a chariot, moths to a flame, utterly powerless. Afterward, Guan began to experience more peril. When the godless immortal brought him to the land of reincarnation and he started to cultivate his karma avatars, he caught a glimpse of the greed hidden deep in the godless immortal's eyes, which briefly exposed itself. When all 3,000 of his karma avatars were annihilated, even without the memories of that moment, he could still feel something. There was no so-called transcendence. To annihilate one's own reincarnation bodies in other spacetimes and great worlds only eliminated karma, and for each one destroyed, one would suffer from karma retribution, a pain that Guan could feel. Life is vast. Looking back, it seems like smoke and clouds. When Guan reached the end point of this life, he once again felt the might of the celestial spirit god, whose power was extremely terrifying, much more than what it seemed on the surface. Before his death, as his divine soul was not yet completely dissipated, Guan saw the celestial spirit god swing his axe at the godless immortal, successfully decapitating him. The godless immortal wore an expression of shock, as if he had not anticipated the celestial spirit god to be so powerful. Chapter 5:16, Taoist unique venerates skill. The reincarnation inheritance had ended. When Guan opened his eyes, the sky had darkened. He looked up to see the night sky sparkling with stars, making him feel as if a lifetime had passed. The memories from Black Profound Emperor's million-year reincarnation had completely merged into his soul. It was as if he had truly lived through those million years. Dark Great World, Profound Pure Great World, Path of the Great Tao, Land of Reincarnation. He had truly become the Black Profound Emperor, the two merging into one. The so-called reincarnation body is actually just the same soul, merely manifesting under different Tao rules. A reincarnation body can kill another reincarnation body, but it cannot kill the primordial soul. If the primordial soul perishes, all reincarnation bodies will cease to exist. It seemed that Black Profound Emperor realized this, which is why he stopped releasing karma avatars. As to whether Black Profound Emperor could differentiate if he was the primordial soul, Guan couldn't judge. But in fact, for a reincarnation body, it doesn't matter whether it is the primordial soul or not, as it does not affect the reincarnation Bodhi's ability to live. The primordial soul could even become a reliance for the reincarnation body. God of Destruction had Black Profound Emperor destroy all other reincarnation bodies just so he could escape all karmic ties and then possess a body to evade the celestial court's pursuit. Regrettably, what God of Destruction didn't understand was that Black Profound Emperor's reincarnation body operated differently from what he perceived as reincarnation. Guan's lifespan reincarnation was not bound by the Tao rules. No one could therefore infer his reincarnation body and primordial soul through Black Profound Emperor. This life, Black Profound Emperor had helped Guan understand the Great Thousand World, Path of the Great Tao, and Land of Reincarnation, even revealing to him other paths of cultivation. Taoist Emperor. The Taoist Emperor is a branch in the path of cultivation, anchored in the Great Tao, obtaining the power of the Great Tao at an earlier realm, becoming an existence that realms cannot measure. To become a Taoist Emperor, one must gain the acknowledgement of the Great Tao, an exceedingly arduous task. Black Profound Emperor also became a Taoist Emperor through the inheritance left by the evil Emperor. The world established by the great Tao is truly boundless. Even an innate golden immortal is not enough to comprehend the true essence of the great Tao. Footsteps approached from behind, interrupting Gu An's thoughts. Shenzhen came and sat in front of him, curiously asking, "What's wrong? You've been here all day and night." She had watched for a long time and approached only after seeing Guan slightly move. Guan turned his head to look at her and smiled. "Naturally, I am comprehending the natural order of the universe." Seeing the smile on his face, Shenzhen breathed a sigh of relief. She took out a painting scroll, then unfurled it. It depicted Gu An's silhouette, looking so somber, radiating a morose and eerie aura of death. "This is a painting I made of you earlier. During the process, I saw some visions," Shenzhen said cautiously. This piqued Gu An's interest. Could she have seen his reincarnation memories? "What did you see?" Guan asked with a smile, his smile also easing Shenzhen's nervousness. Previously, Gu An's silhouette had brought immense pressure on Shenzhen, instinctively terrifying her. If it weren't for her relationship with Guan, she really wouldn't have dared to approach. Shenzhen hesitated for a moment, then said, "I saw many visions, all fragments, but quite what? Quite shocking. The events and enemies you encountered are beyond what I could have ever imagined." Shenzhen replied, thinking of the god of destruction's form, and couldn't help but shudder. Who wouldn't despair when faced with such an existence? She thought again about Gu An's parting with Fairy Bai Xian, and when she saw Fairy Bai Xian again, that aloof and lofty demeanor made her sympathize with Guan. No wonder so many beauties threw themselves at Guan, yet he remained indifferent. It turned out he had already experienced a deeply memorable love. Listening to her thoughts, Guan guessed the scenes she had glimpsed. Although they were fragments, the fact that she could see them proved her talent for understanding the way of cause and effect. It wasn't just the way of cause and effect, perhaps Shenzhen could also glimpse into the path of reincarnation and the way of fate. Guan pretended to be serious. "Those things you've seen, aside from those about me, don't talk about them, and certainly don't draw them, to avoid trouble." Shenzhen nodded. She wasn't foolish. How could she dare to draw the god of destruction, whom even Guan couldn't defeat? Looking at Gu An's face, Shenzhen felt that he was also carrying a burden, facing enemies he couldn't overcome. Perhaps Guan had come to hide in the celestial spirit great world just to avoid these formidable beings. For the first time, Shenzhen felt a strong desire to become stronger. Although she was unclear about what exactly had transpired between Guan and that woman, seeing her lofty look down on Guan infuriated Shenzhen. One day, she would accompany Guan to take revenge. After all, she had no attachments in this life and was only following Guan to cultivate. From now on, Gu An's enemies were her own. Hearing her thoughts, Guan couldn't help but laugh and cry, but he was, of course, somewhat touched. It was not in vain that he had brought her to the dojo. "I will pass on to you a divine skill that will aid you in better understanding the Tao. Do you want to learn it?" Chapter 517, 5,000 years old. The cause of transformation. This cycle of reincarnation involving the Black Profound Emperor was just a minor episode in Gu An's life, a warning he gave to Shenzhen to keep secret before he returned to his usual rhythm of daily life. Gathering flowers and herbs, mentoring disciples, reading, writing, and so forth. Others in the Taoist field of the beginningless busied themselves with their own cultivation, and time passed quickly before them. In the blink of an eye, Guan celebrated his 5,000th birthday. He alone knew this fact, as everyone around him considered him an old monster who had lived untold years. That year, during the summer, Guan sat on a boulder in the forest, checking his attribute panel. Name, Guan. Lifespan, 5000/61, 551, 478, 029. Physique, primordial infinite body. Cultivation level, perfection in the innate golden immortal realm. A lifespan of over 615 billion years, not bad, steadily increasing. Guan thought thus, a smile appearing on his face. Beside him was a stream, the very place where he had first met Yi Qingshan and others, now a boundary line of the forbidden land of the Qianquan sect. He stayed here to wait for someone. While waiting, Guan looked towards the distance, observing the current state of his old acquaintances. Martial resolution had become a high-ranking member of the Supreme Sect, but power was corrupting his talent. Profound celestial intent was still traveling the world, having relinquished all responsibilities since the Supreme Sect had grown stronger and leading a carefree life. Jiang Qiong had become a Supreme Elder, currently in seclusion and cultivating. Li Xiandao, supported by Yang Jian, began to expand the boundaries of the Tai Tsang dynasty. The world remained a battleground between the Immortal Dynasty and the Holy Court, with both sides losing numbers but their overall destiny improving as they birthed more powerful and outstanding individuals. Without the intervention of the free immortal, all was relatively peaceful. Gu An's gaze landed on Leah, who had been quickly increasing in cultivation under the tutelage of the Sword Annihilation ancestor, especially in his sword intent, which was fiercely potent. Having instruction surpassing even the 9 heavens of the immortal path from a sword Dao expert, Li Ya's opportunity was among the top in the world, only in how surpassing him among their generation. With the vast world filled with talents like fish in a river, the Supreme Sect producing 2 pinnacle geniuses gave Guan a great sense of achievement. With this feeling of accomplishment, Guan began to predict Li Ya's future. As he calculated, his expression grew peculiar. Such a possibility. Guan thought of the celestial Dao Golden Core and the Sword Annihilation ancestor, feeling that such a future was indeed reasonable. Guan walked slowly, and his voice gradually soothed the waves in LV Xian's heart. When they returned to the Daoist field of the beginningless, a figure appeared out of nowhere in front of them. It was the Blood Prison Great Saint. The transformed Blood Prison Great Saint looked at LV Xian and sneered, "Didn't expect you to come. Let's have a match." He had long wanted to fight LV Xian. LV Xian clearly remembered the Blood Prison Great Saint and immediately agreed to the challenge without hesitation, thus, completely pushing his worries aside. Guan raised his hand to create a barrier, allowing the two to enter and fight to their heart's content. Once they entered, they immediately unleashed their auras, which also alerted the others in the dojo since they were unfamiliar with LV Xian's aura and couldn't help but overthink. One figure after another appeared beside Guan, inquiring about LV Xian's identity. Guan briefly introduced him, and when they heard that Guan had personally brought LV Xian in, they dismissed their concerns and began to look forward to his performance. Chen Chuan felt LV Xian's aura and secretly marveled. As they were both in the Nirvana realm, he felt he was probably no match for LV Xian. Celestial Demon Child, Celestial Cyan, Tian Bai, and Ghost Mother of Ephemera also felt a sense of awe. Jiang Shi and Ensheng Tian watched the fight earnestly, hoping to learn. Shenzhen came up to Guan and whispered, "His karma and destiny are changing rapidly." Guan glanced at her but did not respond. Indeed, there were changes. The changes were due to Guan cleansing LV Xian's karma to prevent powerful beings from using him to predict the presence of the Daoist field of the beginningless. Better safe than sorry, even though Guan was already an innate golden immortal, he still acted cautiously. Guan looked at LV Xian, his eyes revealing a hint of expectation. Meanwhile, far across the realms, Leah arrived in front of the 9 Extreme Sacred Heart Sword. The area was an open forest, and the Sword Annihilation ancestor stood nearby, watching Leah. In front of Leah, the 9 Extreme Sacred Heart Sword was stuck in the soil, its blade etched with crimson flame patterns and about 4 fingers wide. The hilt was dark purple, resembling the scale armor of some exotic beast wrapped around it, and the guard was engraved with a lifelike, eerie eye. As Leah looked at the 9 Extreme Sacred Heart Sword, he tried to calm his emotions, while the divine exotic immortal spirit leaped out of his body and perched on his shoulder, eyeing the 9 Extreme Sacred Heart Sword. Chapter 518, Famous throughout the world, Silent Extinction Aura. To have the 9 Extreme Sacred Heart Swords submit to you, you must first be fearless. The greater your fear, the stronger its backlash will be, and then you will endure pain unimaginable to ordinary people. No matter how painful, you must not be afraid. If you are not confident that you can do this, it is still not too late to give up now. The voice of the Sword Annihilation Ancestor came from aside, and Li Ya's expression flickered upon hearing this. The divine exotic immortal spirit turned its head to look at the Sword Annihilation Ancestor and asked, "What happens if one fails?" The Sword Annihilation Ancestor responded, "At best, 2/3 of your 3 souls and 7 spirits will be damaged, but at worst, your soul will scatter, leaving only an empty shell to be possessed by the Sword Soul." These words caused the divine exotic immortal spirit to shudder. Its gaze toward the 9 extreme sacred heart sword was filled with dread. It whispered, "You're not burdened by a deep-seated vendetta, nor do you have anything urgent that you must do right away. Why risk this?" Upon hearing this, Li Ya's eyes became resolute. He took a deep breath and said, "It's precisely because there is no necessity that I must push myself. I don't want to live a mediocre life." With that said, he grasped the hilt of the 9 extreme sacred heart sword. Boom! A violent evil aura burst from inside the 9 extreme sacred heart sword, soaring into the sky and attempting to scatter the clouds above. The surrounding woods shook violently as if they were about to be uprooted. The Sword Annihilation Ancestor raised his hand, pressed forward, and tranquility returned to heaven and earth. The nearby trees no longer trembled, and a ring of chi force appeared around Li Ya. Li Ya's face was strained with popping veins, and his eyes wide. His gaze started to be veiled in bloodshot red, gradually losing their luster. "Young one, why do you wield the sword? What is the killing intent in your heart? Whom do you wish to kill? Why are you discontent? Who do you resent? It seems you're fearing something." A gloomy voice kept echoing in Li Ya's ears, making the world in his eyes spin. He suddenly found himself on a desolate plain under a blood-red sky. He saw a figure in the distance on a hillside, only its silhouette visible, not its face. Just as Li Ya was about to speak, suddenly, a whooshing sound came. Pfft! A sword thrust through Li Ya's throat, making his body lean back, his eyes widening. In his pupils was reflected the face of Guan Guan, with disheveled hair and fierce eyes like a fierce ghost, pierced through his throat. Far away in the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan was feeling the illusion that Li Ya was experiencing. The Sword Annihilation Ancestor was being crafty, actually trying to deduce the karma between Li Ya and him through the 9 extreme sacred heart sword. It seemed that the Sword Annihilation Ancestor had other motives for coming to the celestial spirit great world. Guan was not too worried. The difference in their cultivation levels was vast. The Sword Annihilation Ancestor couldn't reach him. He felt the sword intent from the Sword Annihilation Ancestor entering Li Ya's body, helping him withstand the backlash of the 9 extreme sacred heart sword, which reassured him. Perhaps the Sword Annihilation Ancestor had plans for the supporting Dao Sword Venerable, but at least he wouldn't let Li Ya die right now. Li Ya was only at the Nirvana realm and couldn't bear the power of the 9 extreme sacred heart sword on his own. The fact that the Sword Annihilation Ancestor intervened showed that he truly wanted Li Ya to inherit this power, regardless of later schemes, and Guan would act again if needed. Guan then turned his attention to the battle between the Blood Prison Great Saint and LV Xian, feeling expectant. He personally trained LV Xian, who must become stronger as, after many years in the primordial era, LV Xian was the strongest in heaven and earth. A smile involuntarily appeared on Gu An's face as he thought of the delightful outcome. Meanwhile, LV Xian was feeling immense pressure, shocked by the strength of the Blood Prison Great Saint, yet he was also thrilled. To think a fierce bull could be so powerful, his training with Guan would surely make him stronger. The celestial demon child, an Xian, Qin Chuan, and others were also discussing the battle, equally astounded by LV Xian's displayed strength since the Blood Prison Great Saint was a loose immortal, and for a Nirvana realm cultivator to fight a loose immortal to such an extent spoke volumes of his talent. At dusk. Supreme Sect, 3rd Medicine Valley. Long Qing came down from the pavilion. He saw Candle Star standing on a roof, gazing steadily into the distance. He immediately flashed to Candle Star's side and asked, "What are you looking at?" Candle Star replied, "The 9 extreme sacred heart sword." The sword is recognizing its master, and it's recognizing a cultivator from the Nirvana realm. Nirvana realm cultivator? Long Qing couldn't help but frown, finding it absurd. Candlestar continued, speaking of which, this person has some connections with you. To be precise, he is connected through the cause and effect of the supporting Dao sword venerable, and his name is Leah. Elderly? Long Qing's tightly furrowed brows relaxed. If it's him, it's not surprising, perhaps my master is protecting him. Long Qing had grown up following Guan and knew well the relationship between Guan and Leah. Candlestar looked at Long Qing and asked with a smile, "Do you think your master has really left the celestial spirit great world?" Although Long Qing had already reached an agreement with Candlestar, he still retained a bit of wariness towards him, given the vast difference in their cultivation levels. Long Qing shook his head. "How would I know? After all, I didn't follow him." Candlestar smiled, deciding not to ask any further. How powerful will Elderly become after mastering the 9 extreme Sacred Heart Sword? Long Qing asked curiously. The 9 extreme Sacred Heart Sword had caused such a stir in the past, and he had longed for it too. Candlestar answered, "With this sword in hand, even the 9 heavens of the immortal path cannot kill him. However, the extent of the power he can wield reaches only as high as the heaven and earth flying immortal realm." Long Qing fell silent, his eyes filled with envy and astonishment. This was akin to soaring to the skies. It seemed Elderly was going to become famous throughout the world. As the years flew like an arrow, another millennium passed. Inside the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan lay on a tree reading a book, while below on the grassland, figures like an Xian, celestial demon child, celestial Cyan, Tian Bai, LV Xian, blood prison great saint, and Jiang Shi were meditating, all immersed in the Tao intent imparted by Guan's sunlight sprinkled down, seeping through the gaps in the leaves and falling upon Guan. He slowly raised his head and looked towards the celestial vault. Ever since he had arrived at the Taoist field of the beginningless, time had passed much faster than before, but he did not feel uncomfortable. Instead, he enjoyed it, as his lifespan also increased rapidly. The celestial spirit great world, which had known peace for over 2,000 years, was going to face turmoil again. The will of heavenly Tao always remembered to destroy all living beings. This time, it was other great worlds within the universe that were invading, preparing to take over the celestial spirit great world, with Tao fruit realm beings scheming in the background. Guan had no intention of intervening. Nowadays, the celestial spirit great world was a place where many powerful beings were interconnected with bound interests, and many strong beings would not allow the celestial spirit great world to be destroyed at this critical juncture. He was more of a spectator. "Elder brotherly, although you have already become famous throughout the world, this calamity might cause you to stumble again," Guan murmured to himself, a smile appearing on his face. 500 years ago, Leah had emerged abruptly, wielding the 9 extreme Sacred Heart Sword and challenging sword cultivators across the world. Victorious in every battle, his fame was unparalleled for a time, and people had forgotten about and how, considering Leah the greatest talent in the world, even though he relied on the 9 extreme Sacred Heart Sword. Suddenly, Gu An's expression changed slightly as he looked towards outer heaven. "This aura, are you still not giving up?" Guan thought to himself, his gaze sharp. He felt the aura of the silent destruction god Emperor coming from the world gate. The silent destruction god Emperor had possessed the Long clan's flesh, and in order to capture Long Qing, he even planned to harm all living beings. Such actions had already put him on Gu An's kill list. Chapter 519, The Great Tao Tree, Divine Emperor's Pawn in the Depths of the Universe. A world gate stood tall. Here it seemed as if there were no hours, the years could not taint this grand, towering gate. At this moment, a bright light shone from within the world gate. A figure slowly stepped out from the strong light, clad in black armor, a mysterious presence, a helmet underneath which was as black as a black hole, making it impossible for anyone to see his true face. It was the silent destruction god Emperor. In his right hand, palm facing up, hovered a golden token, long as a knife, intricately carved on its surface, emanating a brilliant golden radiance, dazzling beyond compare. As he walked out of the world gate, he stopped, turned his head to look at the figure of the celestial spirit god. Another 7 figures stepped out one after another from the world gate, men and women alike, each with a celestial demeanor and magnificent bearing, their gazes also turning toward the celestial spirit god. Whatever you all intend to do, you must not destroy this great thousand world, otherwise even your celestial orders won't be able to save you. The voice of the celestial spirit god rang out, indifferent in tone, with an unyielding firmness that allowed no rebuttal. Before the silent destruction god emperor could speak, a man in a white robe behind him raised his hand in greeting and smiled. Celestial god, rest assured, we have only come to capture one person and will not disrupt the rules of the great thousand world. The celestial spirit god did not respond, and the silent destruction god emperor proceeded to step toward the depths of the universe, followed closely by the man in the white robe and others. Soon, this expanse of void fell into silence once more, the bright light inside the world gate dissipated, and the surroundings of the world gate dimmed, with only the light emanating from the celestial spirit god persisting. Although the arrival of the silent destruction god emperor drew Guan's attention, he did not initiate an attack because he felt that the silent destruction god emperor also possessed an innate golden immortal's cultivation level. Battling an opponent of the same realm wasn't wise. Guan, lying on a tree branch, sat up. Forget it, let's have a lifespan simulation. Requires 5 billion years of lifespan, continue? 5 billion years of lifespan? That's way too expensive. Guan directly chose no, there was no need to waste lifespan, especially since the aura of the silent destruction god emperor didn't intimidate him. The silent destruction god emperor wouldn't be able to discover the Taoist field of the beginningless unless he intended to destroy the celestial spirit great world. The face of the silent destruction god emperor was shrouded in darkness, as if he were the most mysterious being in the world, and he responded, "The silent extinction domain was my creation, and silent extinction is my name." The saint minister opened his mouth, his face etched with disbelief. In a valley, the immortal seeker sat beside a lake, gazing at the bright day sky, murmuring, "It seems that I still can't let go." "Whose chess piece are you?" Zhu Shi, who sat meditating in the middle of the lake, opened her eyes and glanced at him, asking, "Whom are you talking about?" "The one who created the chi of annihilation. The divine emperor? Someone of his caliber is also a chess piece?" "Indeed, he's been tirelessly working for the bloodline of the Long clan. He's either being driven by someone behind the scenes or pressured by an even greater force. The waters of this world are becoming muddier, and when the heaven and earth Tao fruit appears, your pressure will only increase." With that said, the immortal seeker's face took on a teasing expression. Zhu Shi hummed, "The Taoist unique venerate skill you passed on to me is so powerful, and with my talent, I'm not afraid." Chapter 520, Inheritance. The 1,000-year battle. The Taoist unique venerate skill is indeed formidable. If one can grasp its essence, dominating a corner of the great thousand world would not be an issue. However, this skill is not so easy to cultivate. The immortal seeker said nonchalantly as his thoughts lingered on the distant holy court. He knew very well how powerful the silent destruction god emperor was, and for that reason, he felt the situation in the world was spiraling out of control. He was only a reincarnated being. He could not intervene in the workings of the heavenly Tao. His role was to assist others. But no matter how great the opportunity he provided Zhu Shi, for her to possess the strength to contend with the silent destruction god emperor before the change of the era was utterly impossible. After Zhu Shi mentioned the Taoist unique venerate skill, her confusion resurfaced. She asked, "What exactly is the origin of the Taoist unique venerate skill?" "In the process of cultivating it, I saw many figures. If they all practice this skill, do they belong to the same sect?" The immortal seeker looked at her and smiled. "Not just anyone can cultivate the Taoist unique venerate skill. This skill is passed down in a single lineage, and I too have only received its technique, never having cultivated it myself. Zhu Shi pondered this after hearing his words. The immortal seeker stood up and said, "Continue with your cultivation. I'll step out for a bit." Zhu Shi did not inquire further but closed her eyes and continued to perceive the Taoist unique venerate skill. Even though she had regained her memories of Xingtian, her interest in the Taoist unique venerate skill remained. With her talent, comprehending the Taoist unique venerate skill still proved to be a struggle, which was enough to indicate the unfathomable depth of this skill. The arrival of the silent destruction god emperor and others did not change the overall situation of the world. Against the backdrop of strife between the Holy Court and Immortal Dynasty, prodigies rose, and great cultivators who had been in seclusion for long periods broke through their limits, reaching higher realms, shaking heaven and earth. The number of living beings between heaven and earth dwindled, with cultivators moving toward the central region of the celestial spirit great world and mortal spirits fleeing to the edges. The number of mortals on the 9-spirit continent was increasing, leading to sects springing up like bamboo shoots after a rainstorm, and even demons began staking out their territories. The Taoist field of the beginningless, situated near the Qinkuan sect, fortunately faced no trouble. On this day, Yi Qingshan and 4 others came into the forest to meet an Exian. Chapter 521. The shock of Candle Star. The arrangement for the once-in-millennium combat spread quickly throughout the Taoist field of the beginningless, invigorating everyone. Staying within the dojo, they spent most of their time in cultivation, which inevitably could become monotonous, so having something to look forward to was naturally good. Plus, they wanted to test the results of their cultivation. Unlike casual sparring, a combat hosted by Guan was sure to be taken seriously. Even an Exian wanted to see how strong she could be when she went all out. At dusk, the forest swayed gently with the wind, quiet and exquisitely beautiful. "Can I participate too?" The ghost mother of Ephemera, dressed in black, stood beside Guan and asked excitedly. Guan was admiring a newly matured spirit flower. He replied, "Would I really be playing a trick on you?" The ghost mother of Ephemera's heart raced. She understood what participating in the combat meant. It meant that Guan had accepted her. As she excitedly moved to kneel, an invisible force stopped her. "I've said before, within the Taoist field of the beginningless, there is no need for such formalities," Guan said, his face showing satisfaction. The quality of this spirit flower was good, it could be transplanted to his study. The ghost mother of Ephemera nodded, her heart pounding fast. After the joy, she felt pressure. The people at the dojo were not simple. Guan didn't pay attention to what she was thinking. Taking the spirit flower, he left, while the ghost mother of Ephemera still respectfully bowed to his retreating figure. This is an opportunity one cannot miss. Her eyes sparkling, she felt a surge of power throughout her body. In the Taoist field of the beginningless, there was no lack of heavenly materials and earthly treasures, and with a great power like Guan as a mentor, the so-called loss of freedom, she thought, was not permanent. As long as she performed well, there would come a day when Guan would need her, send her on missions, and then she could return to the delights of the human world. In the blink of an eye, another 100 years passed. The autumn wind blew into the 3rd medicine valley of the supreme sect where Lv Badian, with his white hair, stood in front of a medicine garden. Looking at the medicinal herbs, he seemed to see a blurred figure. It was as if a scene from long ago overlapped before his eyes. Long Qing came to his side and asked, "Sect leader, what are you thinking about? You're not reminiscing about my master again, are you?" "Don't worry, he's definitely fine." Lv Badian came to his senses and looked at Long Qing, his face involuntarily forming a smile. He felt that Long Qing was very much like Guan, not just in stature but also in appearance. Guan had many disciples, but only Long Qing resembled him. Chapter 522, Celestial Dragon Dharma Aspect, Breaking Destiny. Feeling the sharpness at his throat, Candlestar asked in a deep voice, "If you don't explain your origins, I can't possibly let you get close to him." The man in white glanced at Candlestar, his sword-raising hand perfectly straight, like a bridge, making Candlestar feel he was hard to reach. Although wary of the man in white, Candlestar was not yet at the point of fear. For the sake of entering the World Gate, how much effort had he exerted to obtain such an opportunity? How could he give up now? "My identity cannot be revealed, otherwise it will harm both him and you. You just need to know that the sword in my hand can diminish your Tao fruit," the man in white said with an indifferent look in his eyes. As his words fell, a terrifying sword intent instantly locked onto Candlestar, causing the gaze of profound Yuan free immortal to lose its luster. The man in white turned and sheathed his sword, continuing to walk towards Long Qing. Candlestar stood dumbfounded in place, his body trembling slightly. The clash between the two was not hidden. Many disciples saw the man in white draw his sword against Candlestar, yet they did not act rashly, for they all knew that Candlestar was the strongest existence in Medicine Valley. Even the Valley Master held great respect for him. The third Medicine Valley of today did not possess the cohesion of 1,000 years ago. Most disciples were merely passing through, at least they would not risk their lives for Long Qing. Noticing the approach of the man in white while chatting with LV Badian, Long Qing's gaze fell upon Candlestar. He saw Candlestar rooted to the spot, body trembling, gaze vacant, clearly not in a proper state. Just as he was about to speak up, the man in white suddenly arrived in front of him, startling Long Qing into a reflexive step back. Snap! The scabbard pressed on Long Qing's shoulder, rendering him immobile. Long Qing's eyes widened, a look of disbelief crossing his face. LV Badian beside him also reacted, instinctively wanting to make a move against the man in white, but was subdued by a single glance from the man. Faced with the man in white's gaze, LV Badian felt as if had entered another dimly lit world, surrounded by dense treasure swords pointing towards him, sending shivers down his spine. He felt as if moving even an inch would result in colliding with a sword, creating a suffocating and terrifying sensation of being unable to move at all. In reality, Long Qing did not fall into an illusion realm, but facing the man in white, he felt no less pressure. The scabbard on his shoulder felt like a majestic mountain, such that he couldn't muster his mana. Long Qing stared at the man in white and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you, and do we have a grudge?" After Guan left, he didn't always stay in the Third Medicine Valley either. Sometimes he would venture out for experience, having met countless people. But he could be certain he hadn't provoked such a formidable being. The only thing he could think of was his bloodline. If a strong being like Candlestar could not resist this person, then surely this being was not from the celestial spirit great world. The man in white studied Long Qing, and after a long time, with no immediate response, his eyes betrayed a hint of disappointment. Such a look made Long Qing uncomfortable, a sense of inexplicable anger rising in him. The man in white spoke, "You're more disappointing than I imagined. You need not be nervous, I won't harm you. There's no one in this world more trustworthy than me." Heh, Long Qing gave a hollow, humorless laugh. The man in white continued, "My surname is Long as well, you understand now, don't you?" At these words, Long Qing's eyes widened in astonishment. Suddenly, Candlestar appeared beside Long Qing, reaching out to grab the scabbard of the man in white. "Wait. Let him finish," Long Qing said in a low voice, his eyes fixed intensely on the man in white. Candlestar had just broken free from the illusion technique. He hadn't heard what the man in white had just said. He turned his head towards the man in white, his eyes full of shock and wariness. The man in white withdrew his hand, and Candlestar followed by releasing his grasp, watching as the man planted his treasure sword into the ground. As the scabbard struck the earth, the surrounding environment underwent a drastic change, and they found themselves in a dark world. Looking around, the ground was covered in sword shadows, all plunged into the earth. "What a powerful domain," Candlestar muttered to himself, his eyes sweeping around as a storm of amazement churned within him. The man in white stared at Long Qing and said, "My name is Long Jun, son of Emperor Longxin, your ancestor." I have glimpsed your entire life in the past. Although much is obscured, I can generally deduce your future path. Candlestar's face drastically changed, his eyes brimming with shock. Long Qing was also greatly startled, silent, gazing dumbfounded at Long Jun. In the future, you will lead the supreme sect to unify the celestial spirit great world, but you will ultimately die at the hands of the war court. Long Jun continued, his gaze shifting to Long Qing. You will be possessed by the silent destruction god emperor. Long Qing's heart pounded wildly. Long Jun then turned his eyes toward Candlestar and said, you will be forged into a Daoist soldier by the lord of the war court. You will eternally subjected to torture. Candlestar's face turned ghostly pale as if he had realized something. Long Qing gritted his teeth and asked, the Long clan has been annihilated until only I remain. You say you're my ancestor, why didn't you take action? Long Jun looked at him with a deep and distant gaze, because my current fate is worse than death. What you see is not me from this moment, but from the past. This is a method I left before being captured, hoping to help the Long clan escape its destiny. Long Qing couldn't comprehend his words and involuntarily glanced at Candlestar. Candlestar furrowed his brows and asked, do you mean that you have traveled here from the past or projected yourself here? Long Jun said, if it's too hard to understand, don't dwell on it. What's most important is how to resolve the impending calamity. If the silent destruction god emperor succeeds in possessing you, he might indeed gain the powers of my grandfather. Are you talking about Long Zhan? Yes, although I inherited his destiny pattern, in comparison to his bloodline power, it's really nothing, Long Jun answered. Long Qing recalled Candlestar mentioning before that Emperor Longxin's grandson had also inherited the talents of celestial dragon Emperor Long Zhan. He opened his mouth, intending to ask. Isn't Emperor Longxin's grandson Long Jun's son? As if seeing through his confusion, Long Jun replied, yes, my child also inherited this bloodline power. It was precisely because of it that the Long clan met with disaster. He is already dead, and I am still alive only because my father told me the stories of my grandfather. Since childhood, I have hidden my talents, but my child was born during the prime of the war court, and he was reckless. Long Qing felt dizzy from the information, and Candlestar was equally shocked, rapidly contemplating. Long Jun looked at Long Qing and said, to break the Long clan's fate, you need to practice a divine skill. Long Qing frowned and asked, which divine skill? The celestial dragon Dharma aspect. This skill will allow you to conjure the Dharma aspect of people with whom you share a blood connection to fight alongside you. Even if I master it, won't their strength depend on my cultivation level? Asked Long Qing, frowning. He instinctively resisted, feeling the divine skill came at great cost. No, the strength of the conjured Dharma aspects will be solely based on their own cultivation levels when they were alive. The difficult part is to conjure them. This is a skill created by my father, reportedly inspired by my grandfather. He said my grandfather's skill was even more powerful, but unfortunately, I have never witnessed it, Long Jun explained. What's the price to learn this skill? Asked Long Qing, taking a deep breath. Long Jun replied, it will cost you a lifetime. You may bear offspring before exercising this power and then sacrifice yourself to break the Long clan's fate. That's the only way. Only way? Long Qing's brow furrowed, and for some reason, his thoughts turned to his master. Did his master leave because of his fate? But if that were the case, why would senior sister Anshin ask on behalf of his master if he was willing to follow? Long Qing looked up at Long Jun and asked, then do you know my master? Chapter 523, The Strength of the Long Clan, Your Master? Long Jun frowned, his tone revealing confusion as his gaze shifted to Candlestar and he asked, besides him, do you have any other masters? Upon hearing this, Long Qing and Candlestar exchanged a glance. Long Jun actually didn't know about this. What did that imply? Did it mean that Gu An's Dao practice exceeded Long Jun's? It could also mean that Long Jun truly might be from the past, for if he were a man living in the present, it would be impossible for him not to know the name of supporting Dao's sword Venerable. Seeing their expressions, Long Jun immediately raised his hand and began to calculate with his fingers. Candle Star suddenly relaxed, thinking that if Long Jun couldn't deduce Long Qing's backer, didn't that suggest the future might not be as he had seen it? His choice of Long Qing was not just because of Long Qing's bloodline but also because of Long Qing's background. In his view, why would supporting Dao's sword Venerable take action to shield all living beings from silent destruction God Emperor, if not to protect Long Qing? There were too many coincidences. Long Qing, pursued and hunted, receiving protection from a hidden great power, surely had unknown cause and effect. Long Qing broke the silence, asking, "If you're truly my ancestor, can you deduce how many members of the Long clan are still alive in the world?" As he grew older and more experienced, Long Qing wasn't foolish. He felt that his master had not just stumbled upon him by chance. Even if it was a coincidence, why would his master adopt him after seeing through his origins? No matter how he thought about it, he felt it was very likely that his master was also a member of the Long clan. Unable to deduce anything about Guan, Long Jun said, "I have calculated. There are only you and I." He furrowed his brows and hesitated before asking, "Could it be that you have another master?" "That's right, if he hadn't taken action, would have died long ago," Long Qing replied. After hearing this, Long Jun's brow relaxed, and he mused to himself, "No wonder there are so many unclear areas." Long Qing no longer spoke further, instead beginning to weigh the divine skills Long Jun had mentioned. Even though he had another master to rely on, if that master was not from the Long clan, how could he drag his master into this predestined karmic retribution? "No matter who your master is, I can confirm that he has no blood relation to the Long clan, and in the end, you must still bear the fate of our clan," Long Jun said to Long Qing with seriousness. He did not further inquire about Long Qing's master because he comprehended how vast the great Tao was due to his high realm. Even if Guan were to give him guidance now, it would likely be very difficult to change his fate. Of course, Guan would not guide him, as his karma lies in the past. To interfere with the past would only court more trouble in the present. Guan was puzzling over one thing now. How was Long Zhan's lifespan evolution ability passed on to the descendants? He suspected there was another cause. Perhaps the silent destruction god emperor and the war court simply mistook the son of Long Jun to have inherited Long Zhan's capabilities, thereby asserting the bloodline of the Long clan as special. Regardless, Long Jun was, after all, Gu An's grandson. Though he was a reincarnation body, he could not simply ignore that. Very well. Now, he had one more reason to deal with the war court. In fact, without initiating an attack, the war court would continue to pester him, but now that he had an unavoidable reason to make a move, he was even more determined to confront the war court. Under the tree, Guan took out the Fate Pen and the Infinite Sword Book. There were many ways to kill an enemy. That was what he would do next, wait for Long Jun to reveal the Lord of the War Court's name. As for the celestial dragon Dharma aspect mentioned by Long Jun, Guan did not take it seriously. Long Zhan did discuss the creation of the celestial dragon reincarnation Dharma aspect in its early stages with Long Xian, but Long Xian did not actually learn the true celestial dragon reincarnation Dharma aspect. Guan would also occasionally cultivate this divine skill, and he had been able to summon the reincarnation body. Long Zhan, Yang Xian, Lu Han, Ji, Black Profound Emperor, and others, each had their own talent. Someday, when Guan waved his hand grandly, and the reincarnation body appeared in front of him, that moment would be terrifying, and even he himself could not judge. In the future, he would continue to undergo lifespan reincarnation, which meant the celestial dragon reincarnation Dharma aspect could only become increasingly more powerful. Seeing Long Jun start to transmit divine skills, Guan withdrew his divine sense and continued to sleep. He prepared to dream with the experiences of Ji, to roam the great Tao worlds of the future. To comprehend the past, to pursue the origin of the great Tao, to roam the future, was also to pursue the direction of the great Tao. Long Jun took up residence in the Third Medicine Valley, hiding his real name. As he stayed longer in the Medicine Valley, the disciples began to call him the Senior in White. He would occasionally guide the direct disciples of Long Qing in their cultivation, but more often, he would play Go with others in the dojo established by Guan, contemplating the Tao in the game of Go. In a blink, 10 years quickly passed. One day, Long Jun came to the heaven-repairing platform of the outer sect city. Having just arrived at Supreme Sect, he had heard of the legend of the supporting Tao sword venerable, but previously his attention had been focused on Long Qing. Now he understood that Long Qing's mentor was the supporting Tao sword venerable, who had saved the celestial spirit great world on many occasions, which piqued his curiosity about the supporting Tao sword venerable. Today, he would experience the supporting Tao sword venerable's sword intent. He, too, was a sword cultivator. As he just stepped onto the heaven-repairing platform, his face suddenly changed, he furrowed his brows, and then stepped forward. Thousands of years had passed, yet the heaven-repairing platform was still crowded with people. Anyone who came to the Supreme Sect wanted to feel the mythical heritage of the sect. Passing through the crowd, Long Jun came to the heaven-splitting axe. Standing beside the heaven-splitting axe, Zui Yijin glanced at Long Jun. Seeing his extraordinary bearing, he assumed he must be a great cultivator. But even with such a guess, Zui Yijin was not polite and with a wave of his hand, said, "Go back and line up." Just as Long Qing was about to speak again, suddenly, an immense aura surged from afar, shocking the entire great heaven and earth, so powerful that even mortal spirits could feel the terrifying pressure. Long Jun looked up, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. Unexpectedly, there is such sword intent in this world, Long Jun pondered thoughtfully. Long Qing also looked in the direction the aura was coming from, but he was not surprised. Every few decades, or centuries, there would always be a powerful aura erupting, either from a great power battling or from someone coming out of seclusion. He looked back at Long Jun, hoping to gain some enlightenment from the ancestor. However, before he could speak, Long Jun vanished into thin air. Long Qing couldn't help but sigh. Long Jun always appeared and disappeared unpredictably, never instructing him on how to practice the celestial dragon dharma aspect. For some reason, he suddenly thought of his master, who also disliked giving personal guidance. Could it be that his comprehension was not high enough? Thinking this, Long Qing's mood sank. On the boundless wasteland, Liya in black clothes was holding the 9 extreme sacred heart sword, his body surrounded by powerful sword chi, which caused his long hair to float and sway wildly. So powerful, Liya's face showed surprise and delight. He had just reached the loose immortal realm, and his sword intent had increased so much. He couldn't help but look toward the sword annihilation ancestor standing in the distance. The sword annihilation ancestor was looking at him, stroking his beard and saying, "This sword Tao originates from the sacred heart sword Tao, but it is still far from the true sacred heart sword Tao. However, it is enough for you to dominate this shattered great thousand world." The sword annihilation ancestor was satisfied, even pleasantly surprised with Li Ya's cultivation progress. How strange. This lad seemed very ordinary at first glance, only with some fate connected to the supporting Tao sword venerable enabling him to reach this point today. Why did he find it so easy to cultivate the sacred heart sword Tao? It wasn't clear if it was a misconception of the sword annihilation ancestor, but he felt it wasn't that Li Ya's comprehension was outstanding, but rather that the sacred heart sword Tao was willing to accept him. Liya was unaware of the sword annihilation ancestor's thoughts, becoming immersed in his own strength, unable to extricate himself. Just then, a figure suddenly appeared beside him, startling the sword annihilation ancestor enough to swiftly move in front of Liya. It was Long Jun. Long Jun stared at Liya, his gaze peculiar. The sword annihilation ancestor looked at Long Jun, his brows tightly furrowed, and asked in a deep voice, "What does your excellency intend to do?" Long Jun's speed was too fast, so fast that the sword annihilation ancestor could tell he was no match for him. Liya was also startled by Long Jun, instinctively raising his sword, but when he saw Long Jun, he was momentarily confused. For some reason, there was a slight resemblance to Guan in Long Jun's features. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't similar. Leah cursed to himself, feeling that he was being absurd once more. He tried his best not to think about Guan, fearing it would lead to laxity. "Senior, may I ask what brings you here?" Leah asked neither servilely nor overbearingly. Long Jun asked, "Where does this sword Dao come from?" Leah replied, "Sacred Heart Sword Dao." "Has Senior heard of it before?" Seeing how tense the sword annihilation ancestor was, Leah felt panicked inside, but he had to maintain composure on the surface. If the other party wanted to kill him, with the speed displayed, he wouldn't even have time to react. Perhaps he wasn't an enemy. The subordinate of the silent destruction god Emperor also had the cultivation level of a heaven-encompassing free immortal, considered the most formidable among the silent destruction god Emperor's followers. He and Long Jun battled with the power of their realms and did not affect the celestial spirit great world. In Li Ya's eyes, the two did not make a move, merely standing off against each other from afar. In reality, they clashed countless times in an instant, their power manifesting within their realms. Whether it was the silent destruction god Emperor's subordinate or Long Jun, both were cautious in their actions. They weren't wary of each other but of the strongest being that suppressed the celestial spirit great world. In the end, the silent destruction god Emperor's subordinate left with his tail between his legs, and Long Jun disappeared as well. This battle would undoubtedly reach the ears of the silent destruction god Emperor, and Guan wanted to see how he would react. Guan planned to break through after reaching a lifespan of 100 billion years and then deal with the silent destruction god Emperor. Until then, he did not want the silent destruction god Emperor to act rashly. Clearly, the silent destruction god Emperor was also wary of him and had not taken action against Long Qing just yet. And so, Guan maintained his wait-and-see attitude. Several months later, the silent destruction god Emperor began to make his move. He transformed into a Daoist and made contact with the sword annihilation ancestor and Leah. He was actually interested in the Sacred Heart Sword Dao as well. Could it be that Long Jun did it on purpose, wanting to shift the silent destruction god Emperor's attention to Leah? With Long Jun's Dao practice, he could certainly have foretold of Li Ya's past. Even if he couldn't see through Guan, he would likely be aware of Li Ya's experiences by deducing from what others said. To know that Li Ya received Gu An's inheritance would not be difficult. "So, you want to use me to go up against the silent destruction god Emperor," thought Guan as he was quietly picking medicinal herbs. He wasn't angry, after all, Long Jun was his grandson, and Long Jun's scheming was also for the sake of protecting Long Qing. However, if Long Jun could see through the cause and effect of Li Ya's life, then the silent destruction god Emperor could do the same. The silent destruction god Emperor did not force his hand against Leah. Instead, he offered divine skills in exchange. The divine skills he brought forth even tempted the sword annihilation ancestor, and ultimately, the silent destruction god Emperor joined Leah in understanding the Sacred Heart Sword Dao. Guan felt this was truly a twisted fate. He was irreconcilable with the silent destruction god Emperor, yet the god Emperor had good relations with both Hao and Leah. The cause and effect of this world is truly complex. No matter how high one's realm is, they are always entangled with karma. Under the cosmic starry sky, the celestial Tao golden core continues to burn, its radiance seeming eternal. In front of the celestial Tao golden core, young immortal emperor slowly stood up, with Hao meditating beside him, also opening his eyes and looking up at him. "We can't wait any longer, the destiny of great heaven and earth is being divided. If this goes on, the destiny of the immortal dynasty will eventually be eroded." Young immortal emperor murmured to himself. The conflict between the immortal dynasty and the holy court continued to this day, with the destiny of both sides growing. However, in reality, young immortal emperor could feel the presence of an outer heaven being infiltrating both the immortal dynasty and the holy court. With just one miracle, the destiny of both powers could be usurped. Indeed, this was the case. After his 1,000-year seclusion, the immortal dynasty needed someone to take charge, which presented many opportunities for the forces beyond heaven. He could sense that there was a presence within the immortal dynasty stronger than himself. This made him hesitant to reveal himself, for fear of exposing the location of the celestial Tao golden core. And Hao frowned at young immortal emperor and said, "With your current cultivation level, to accomplish that task, I fear it might be." Young immortal emperor looked at the celestial Tao golden core and said, "Before the great calamity arrives, the highest realm in great heaven and earth was the Zai immortal realm, which indicates that great heaven and earth could only create a free immortal. Now that I have surpassed the free immortal, it's not impossible for me to achieve it." And Hao asked, "If you fail, what then?" Young immortal emperor glanced at him and said, "Then it's up to you to do it." And Hao's expression remained calm as he replied, "If it's up to me, after my success, the immortal dynasty won't be the supreme power of heaven and earth. I'm well aware, but my failure signifies that the destiny of the immortal dynasty has come to an end. What you must do is to protect the living beings of great heaven and earth." After saying this, young immortal emperor stepped toward the celestial Tao golden core. And Hao stood up and watched as young immortal emperor entered the celestial Tao golden core, its raging flames quickly engulfing him. This scene filled Hao with a sense of expectation. He was also curious whether young immortal emperor, with his realm, could accomplish such a feat of creating heaven and earth. As young immortal emperor's figure completely vanished into the celestial Tao golden core, the golden flames of the celestial Tao golden core suddenly came to a halt. Elsewhere, within the Taoist field of the beginningless, in front of a waterfall, Guan was painting with Shenzhen when he suddenly felt something and looked up, frowning. Shenzhen glanced at him, and seeing him looking up, she followed suit. Just as she was about to ask what was happening, her pupils dilated. Above the blue sky, a sun appeared out of nowhere, growing rapidly in size. Not just they, but creatures all over great heaven and earth saw this spectacle, sparking discussions among all beings. A vast pressure enveloped heaven and earth, quieting it. Shenzhen couldn't help but ask, "What is that?" Guan replied softly, "The ruler of the immortal dynasty, young immortal emperor. And the celestial Tao golden core." Shenzhen, surprised, asked, "Young immortal emperor? What does he intend to do?" Guan didn't hide anything and answered, "He wants to restore the Great Thousand World to its original state." You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.